Good morning, everybody. Tell me if we're live, PJ.
We're live.
We are, okay. Just wanted to chime in. We are here in the Commission chambers for the June Finance and Economic Resiliency Committee meeting. We are waiting to achieve quorum with the commissioners to come, and as soon as we do that, we will return. So I did not want to leave the thousands of people in person or the millions around the world watching in purgatory, so we will be returning shortly. Thank you.
Please take your seats. The meeting is about to begin. Remember to speak into the microphone, as this meeting is being recorded for public record. Please stand by. We are going on air in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning, everybody. We're back. Have Vice Chair Commissioner Suarez that's here. We're going to get kicked off with the Finance and Economic Resiliency Committee meeting for June of 2025. Have a full agenda, so we're going to look to really get through some things and have some pretty important discussions today. Especially my colleague and I think we've really been out in front of getting through and communicating that this could be a challenging budget year. And you see it not only in Miami Beach, but that's probably even more pronounced at the county. That's certainly gotten a lot of press in the headlines, but our county is facing a projected budget shortfall somewhere in the tune of $400-some million. Now, there are some idiosyncratic things that are causing that, such as the constitutional officers overspending or misspending on transit. But we are not immune from some of those challenges facing here in Miami Beach. We will discuss this in a more proper form at the Budget Committee retreats coming up. However, we got in an initial analysis of where property valuations are going to be to essentially maintain base level services. As projected, we would have needed to see property valuation increase of about 7.2%. We saw about a 6.9% increase, with certainly the possibility of our condo market slowing even further. So it becomes even more and more critical that we find inefficiencies, we are prudent with our budget, we're analyzing what truly needs to happen, because a government, we don't sell iPhones, we don't sell widgets, we raise revenue in one way, and that is through tax. So any type of overspending is going to be met with basically flowing through and taxing our residents and our visitors, and that's something that we want to go above and beyond not to do. And I think we both pride ourselves on being very conservative stewards of taxpayer money, so we want to see that continue. Mr. CFO, we'll turn it over to you and the city attorney to open our meeting up, and then we'll get going.
Good morning. Today's meeting of the Finance and Economic Resiliency Committee has been scheduled in a hybrid format with a quorum of the committee physically present and remaining members, staff, and members of the public appearing either in person or virtually via Zoom. In order to participate in today's meeting virtually, members of the public may dial 1-888-475-4499 and enter the webinar ID, which is 863-6059-5462 #, or log into the Zoom app and enter the webinar ID, which again is 863-6059-5462. Any individual wishing to speak on an item must click the raise hand icon if they are using the Zoom app, or dial *9 if you are participating by phone.
A couple of announcements. NB 39 is withdrawn. We have a number of deferrals, mostly to the June 11th meeting. Commissioner Bott, who's a member of FERC, will not be able to attend and asked that her items be put to the June 11th meeting, and we have a few in July. So here we go. OB1 will be deferred to June 11th. OB4, June 11th. OB6, the July FERC meeting. OB7, July FERC meeting. MB5, June 11th. MB11, June 11th. MB19, MB23, and MB27, all June 11th. MB34, July. MB38, June 11th. And MB40, June 11th. The following two items would be linked if heard. MB 42 and 43 related to Crown Castle Fiber. MB 4 and MB 10 related to hotel and Miami Beach workforce parking rates would be linked and heard together. And then we have a number of time certains. 10:30 a.m. MB 44, the Call Me Gabby lease. MB 31, I'm sorry, at 10:31 MB 42 and 43. At 10:32 MB 41. At 10:33, MB 45, and at 10:40, MB 1. Those are the announcements, Chair.
And thank you, Mr. CFO. And what we discussed kind of from an administrative process, we have about 7 or 8 budget process items that essentially no matter what the recommendation is here, they're just going to go back to commission to be heard during the budget process. We could sit here with 2 or 3 people and beat some of these to death just for them to be discussed in what, a month or 2 months from now at the broader committee. Things like adding additional police, additional Marine Patrol. These are all things that we're going to want to discuss as a more unified body. So what we were thinking is essentially just pushing those to be heard as part of the full budget process meeting. Essentially, how I open up, we're going to be finding ourselves in a situation where we have a lot more places where we want or desire to spend money than our ability to do so. So essentially, we're going to come during the budget meeting with a process where we have, let's call it 15 items on a wish list, and we only have funding for 5 or 10 of those. So we'll essentially go through an evaluation process. So I don't really see the need to, beat those to death here when we're going to essentially go through that process again in another couple of weeks. Turn that over to.
Yeah, Chair, yes, during our briefing, your team had identified a number of items that were pretty straightforward to be considered the budget process. If you want, I can list those 8 items that you had discussed, and I think you were going to be entertaining an item just to send back to commission to consider in the 26 budget process. Those items are NB5 related to weekend parks classes, NB7 additional police dividing area 2, NB8 additional Marine Patrol, NB12 wraparound palm tree lighting in the SoFi neighborhood, NB13 festival lights projection mapping to North Beach, MB14, purchasing a mobile police substation, MB15, private security on Lincoln Road, Washington, and MB21, annual allocation to the 6 advisory committees. And I believe we discussed was just asking for a motion to send those back to commission with a recommendation to be considered in the 26 budget process. So we just need someone to make that motion. Okay, we'll show Commissioner Suarez the second.
I'll second.
Okay. All right, all in favor? All right. Thank you, that passes. So we'll show those items going back to the June commission to be confirmed.
Okay, excellent. And then let's get to some of the time certains. We have three that are going to be somewhat administrative or procedural, but let's get started with the Call Me Gabby list. If we can have city staff come up, turn it over to you to open that up, and we'll have city staff present.
Sure. MB 44, discuss a proposed lease agreement between the City of Miami Beach, a Florida Municipal Corporation landlord, and Sobe Toscana LLC tenant, waiving by 5/5 vote the competitive bidding requirements as set forth in Section 8239 of the Miami Beach City Code, finding such waiver to be in the best interest of the city for the use of the city property located at 22 Washington Avenue, directly in front of the tenant's restaurant. Said lease having a term of 9 years and 364 days. MB 44.
Good morning. Ozzy Dominguez, Division Director of Asset Management for the City of Miami Beach. Call Me Gabby, also known as Sobe Toscana, is a tenant, it's a restaurant that has a lease with a private developer across the street from Joe Stonecrab. Directly in front of them is a pie-shaped city parcel of about 2,200 square feet, what they use as seating area. They have entered into a new 16-year lease with their landlord, and they have requested an early renewal so that their agreement with the city is closer in coterminous with their permanent agreement with the restaurant. We do have the tenant here. They have a small presentation if the commission would like to hear a little bit more about it.
I'm not sure if that's necessary. What is your recommendation? You know, how I see this, I think we're all familiar with Call Me Gabby. You're an absolute phenomenal steward of the neighborhood. It is a true neighborhood establishment. It's a walkable area. And I think first and foremost, there's no other use that the city could
Correct.
ever possibly have for that other than leasing it to the tenant in that private development. And just to frame this conceptually for those watching, you have the restaurant that is privately owned, and then the city owns essentially the patio out front that is just west of the sidewalk.
Correct, Mr. Chair. And as you said, there really is no other use for the city, for this parcel. It is in the highest and best use right now. We generate about $70,000 a year. They have 3% annual escalations. They also have an easement agreement within the same footprint for their grease trap that is coterminous with their agreement. And the city staff recommends that we move forward and take this to commission for approval.
And these are fair, free market terms?
Yes, they are.
I'll second.
Thank you.
So we'll show the item to return to commission with a favorable recommendation on the lease extension as presented. And we'll show Commissioner Suarez and Commissioner Magazine as second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Passes 3-0. Should I continue with those lease items as we discussed? Thank you. We're going to hear MB 42 and 44 together. MB 42, discuss a proposed new rooftop lease agreement between Miami Beach Redevelopment Agency, RDA landlord, and Crown Castle Fiber LLC tenant for the operation and maintenance of wireless communication equipment at the Anchor Shops and Garage premises for a term of 9 years and 364 days. And MB 43, discuss a proposed early renewal of the distributed antenna system, DAS, facility use agreement between the City of Miami Beach landlord and Crown Castle Fiber LLC tenant for the continued installation, operation, and maintenance of the DAS at the Miami Beach Convention Center premises to be coterminous with the rooftop lease agreement at the Anchor Shops and Garage for a term of 9 years and 364 days, MB 43.
Thank you very much. We currently have a long-term agreement with Crown Castle Fiber for the antenna at the rooftop of Anchor Garage. It expires October 31st of 2025. So we thought we were doing a renewal, and in discussions with Crown Castle, we found that it was in the best interest, since one system cannot exist without the other, that we do an early termination and new lease for the DAS system at the convention center. The RDA item, which is at Anchor Shops, will have a 25% increase in their rent, so they will be escalating from approximately $5,000 a month, or I'm sorry, $68,000 a year in revenue for the city to $85,000 a year with 3% escalations. We have a security deposit from the tenant that will remain on hand with the convention center site. since they pay a percentage of sales, a percentage of the revenues that they generate from the wireless providers, and there really has not been much change on that. We did negotiate with them to get a one-time $25,000 rent payment upon execution of the agreement. Both agreements would be effective November 1st of 2025 and be for 9 years, 364 days. Staff recommends that we move forward with this as well.
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll show this return to the commission with a favorable recommendation for the lease extension as presented, and we'll show both Commissioner Suarez and then Commissioner Magazine as second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, show it passed. Thank you. And then the next item is MB 41. MB 41 is discuss a proposed lease agreement between Miami Beach Redevelopment Agency, a public body corporate and politic RDA landlord, and the Miami-Dade County Tax Collector's Office tenant for approximately 3,955 square feet of ground floor retail space at the Anchor Shops and Garage located at 116th Street, units 1 through 5, Miami Beach, Florida premises for a term of 9 years and 364 days. MB 41.
Thank you very much.
Ozzy, before you open that up, Commissioner Fernandez, do you want to introduce, I don't want it to fly under the radar, the critical service that we are bringing to Miami Beach. And I know that you were pretty instrumental in actually helping find this location. And I think our citizens should be fully aware of the service that we are bringing to Miami Beach. I want to welcome our county partner here from Dario Fernandez's office. He's just been a tremendous partner to our city, and we look forward to working together. But Commissioner Fernandez, why don't you just kind of tee up what we're bringing to Miami Beach?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it really is great to see this partnership between Miami-Dade County Tax Collector's Office and the City of Miami Beach to bring the Tax Collector's Office here so that people can renew their tag registrations, they can get new driver's licenses, and address other essential and vital county services right here in the City of Miami Beach without having to go to other locations throughout Miami-Dade County. We had this space that was previously under consideration for another lease. I believe we were going to lease it out to a barbershop.
It was a barbershop and a cafe, but yeah.
A barbershop and a cafe. Great services.
Yes.
But
Maybe
I know
not utilized by Ozzy.
Ozzy might not need the barbershop, but we felt it was in the best interest of the public and the services that the residents are asking from us to consider instead reaching out to the tax collector's office and see how they could best use this space. And as you mentioned, I'd be remiss not to thank our tax collector, Dario Fernandez, and his office, Manny Orbis, Raimundo Delgado, who's present in our meeting today, for their collaboration and for the work in bringing these essential services to our residents right here in our city.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't know what else to say about this particular item. It's a great deal. It's occupying all of the vacancies we have on 16th Avenue at Anchor Shops and Garage. It's market rents, triple net lease. They're providing incredible services, and they're going to be doing a complete build out. We should be getting renderings prior to the commission meeting, so we should be able to show some renderings at that meeting. In lieu of any tenant allowance, we are going to be providing a 10-month rent abatement for them after the commencement date of the lease to allow them to recover some of the investments that they're putting into the space. And then they're ready to rock and roll.
Just a pretty credit-worthy tenant, correct?
Very worthy tenant. I can personally attest recently.
There you go.
All right, I'll second.
Thanks. So we'll show the item return to commission with a favorable recommendation for the lease as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Show pass 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then chair the next time certain. Thank you. The next time certain is MB 45, discuss the creation and implementation of a One Miami Beach call to action for increased proactive service during important moments. Activate department-wide teams to respond with an emphasis on citywide responsiveness, cleanliness, and setting culture from the top of leadership. MB 45.
Mr. City Manager, I want to welcome you, and just to tee up what this is about setting culture from the top and truly providing an all-hands-on-deck service for all city employees. And came to me through a couple anecdotal experiences, and I think this is very timely as we approach flood season. There were several moments, but two really stood out. One, in the recent flash flood I found myself out providing almost mobile taxi services in my golf cart during a flood moment in Flamingo Park. People quite literally couldn't navigate through, and I found people, I didn't intend this, but I was just out kind of monitoring our city, and people weren't able to navigate through the floodwater. So I would take people in Flamingo Park, where are you at? Where do you need to go? And as I was doing that, there were quite literally, in some areas, 2 feet of water. Cars were stuck in the middle of the road, tow trucks deployed, and I took this one lady with her newborn child, and I dropped them off up by Flamingo, the Flamingo building. And in the midst of all of this, I saw a parking enforcement agent writing a ticket there. Now, that's great in any other circumstance, but it really showed me, I was like, we have this need to essentially, we have these hands that are available. Why are we not activating them to provide essential services that need to happen here? And when I think about who the true partners here are going to be, it's going to be our police, it's going to be our firefighters, whether it be a commissioner, a city manager, a police officer, a firefighter, or a parking agent. If people need to put their hands in a gutter to free leaves during a rainstorm, we need to set culture from the top in doing so. There was another instance where my aide and I, last summer, we were out in the Collins Park area and we were handing out sandbags. And we were there with a great team from Public Works. Brad, your team was incredible. We were probably out there for about 4 hours in the rain. There were 4 individuals from Public Works, and I think we handed out over 200 sandbags. And I don't know if there was a police officer that had to be assigned because of what was happened, but there was a police car that was kind of over in the corner of the lot. And after those 4 hours, some of the Public Works agents were rather elderly, 65, 70 years old, but they're sitting there bending down, putting sandbags in people's cars for hours. And at the end of that, the police officer got out of his car, came over and goes, "Hey, that was really good work, guys." Well, what prevented you from sitting there and handing out sandbags with us, right? So as we prepare for resiliency, as we prepare for the flood season that's coming up, and I think today or the last few days are just a preview of what we're going to be facing, when we have these moments, and it's not just going to be for flooding, but I think that's where we start. I added cleanliness as well. Again, whether you're the city manager, the commissioner, or a parking attendant, you need to flag things and have that pride that it's the same sidewalk. You would do the same thing if this was a sidewalk outside of your home as it is in Miami Beach. So, Mr. City Manager, we've talked about this a bunch. Let me hand it over to you for your thoughts and where we can go with this.
Certainly. Thank you, Commissioner, Committee Chair, Committee members, Eric Carpenter, City Manager. It's kind of nice to be down here. It kind of feels like old home. But thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come and discuss this item. This is something that's very near and dear to me. Since I first started with the city, my least favorite phrase has been "not my job." Everything is everyone's job. We are one city, one team, and when someone from the public sees us, they don't differentiate what department we are. They don't differentiate what job responsibilities that we have. They differentiate whether we're a member of the city and we're here to serve the public, the constituency of the city of Miami Beach. And so you have my full commitment that my leadership team, which is here today, is fully committed to making this a priority and making sure that everybody understands that when things, especially emergent situations, evolve, we need to chip in and help out. But not even just then. I'm a firm believer when I walk down the street and there's a piece of trash, I pick up the piece of trash and I put it in the garbage. I'm not above doing whatever it needs to be done for the city to make this the best version of Miami Beach that it can be.
I appreciate that. Any of my colleagues want to chime in? I have a few questions, but I want to give others the ability to talk if they so choose. If not, what I would ask from you, I don't think that there's any financial considerations that are a part of this. But if perhaps for the July FERC, and I don't want to wait till then to implement it, but if you could return to the July FERC with just kind of what an initial kind of plan of action is, I think it would be great to start for storms, right? So tell me what you are going to implement in talking to your department leaders, whether it be the police or the firefighters, and you say, whether it's in the summertime where we're preparing for hurricanes or one of these flash floods in the afternoon, there has to be some sort of, okay, guys, we're in one of those situations. We're always all hands on deck, as you said, but even more so now. So whether you're a firefighter or a parking agent, I know you were handing out tickets before, but now go find a gutter to stick your hand in and remove the leaves from. Whatever that plan of action looks like, if you could return with some sort of outline in July, that'd be much appreciated.
Happy to bring back an outline, and I can tell you that we've already started with things like that. The chief, police chief and I have had multiple conversations about when these type of events happen, how do we best protect the assets of the residents of Miami Beach? And sometimes it's doing something a little bit outside the box, but sometimes it's a matter of using the authority that they have as police officers to try and keep people from making bad decisions, driving into flooded streets, throwing wakes into people's driveways and ultimately potentially into their garages. And how do they best protect the assets of our citizens?
Yeah, and I think if collectively we are a little more proactive in the lead up and initial phases of some of these storms, it's going to save us a lot of resources that would be otherwise exhausted being reactive. So,
Understood.
excellent. Thank you for coming down, making time.
My pleasure.
So Chair will show the item returning to the July FERC with an implementation plan. If I can, though, we have the last time certain.
Yes.
Would it be MB1? Discuss City of Miami Beach comprehensive financial policy, MB1.
Yeah, and Commissioner Suarez, I know that you have a lot of items that were very much aligned with this. But Mr. CFO, do you want to kind of kick this off about where we're going here?
Sure, if I can. We have, the item is actually kind of broken into two elements, because there's the initial comprehensive citywide financial policies, which I'll go through, and then there's a second half that was in relation to a request or a resolution, I'm sorry, by yourself back at the March Commission meeting to discuss some potential fiscal responsibility measures, which Tamika, our budget director, will be on her way to also work on with us. So first, let me take you through what is the Appendix A, which is the City of Miami Beach Comprehensive Financial Policies. What this is in response to is when I got here, a couple years ago, what it appears is there's been many policies passed over the decades in the city by resolutions. And I identified with the team 14 different resolutions going back to as far as 1994. And my concern was that if someone was not aware that there was a 1996 resolution about establishing a permanent reserve, it could get forgotten about. So my interest was to consolidate them all into one document so that nothing can get lost. And I'll give you an example, actually. It came up recently related to a separate item about Deauville fines. And as I was researching that, the budget department actually found one that I was not aware of related to the use of lump sum payments, which was a financial policy. So if we hadn't done that research, it may have been completely forgotten about, as an example. So what we've done is we've consolidated all 14 different resolutions into one comprehensive document, and I just want to mention a couple of changes to it. So there should be, other than I think one item I want to mention that's slightly different than the existing resolution. So the first section on the first page of Exhibit A, and it printed a little odd in the book, so we did put on the dais a copy of that memo with that attachment A. But the first section is related to the general fund contingency reserves, It still maintains the existing policy of 2 months of emergency reserves requiring a 6/7 vote to tap into, and then 1 month of contingency reserve, getting us to the full 3-month or 25%. And it does list out the policy about how we restore that using our year-end general fund surplus or any prior surplus over the prior year. The next, we have the resort tax. Again, no change from the existing resolution related to having 2 months of the emergency reserve. This one only requires a 5/7 to tap into. And then the 1 month of contingency reserve, is actually 4 months, so giving 6 months. Again, that is exactly status quo as how we have it here today. It does mention about use of non-recurring revenues, so you can only use one-time non-recurring revenues for capital expenditure, one-time expenses, a 1-to-1 match, which is our practice. Next is the use of lump sum payments, which we added in, and that says that any 20% of any one-time unrestricted cash payment of $500,000 more on lease negotiations, legal settlements, audit findings, or other lump sum payments that are not restricted, payments not restricted, must be set aside for, it was transit in there. We're asking it to be a little bit more open to transportation because we have so many transportation problems. So we have that incorporated in there. The next sections on capital asset and renewal and replacement is all existing from our existing resolutions. I don't believe, and Tamika will jump in if she can think of anything that was changed. Getting down the next page on 4 is the 5% of annual funding for capital needs. That one, you've heard us talk about ad nauseum about this commission's goal about getting the 5%. The 5th item there is the use of general fund fiscal and surplus. So there's an existing policy that says all of the year-end surplus would be deposited into the capital reserve. That has historically been waived and used for different purposes, mostly for capital projects. What we're recommending is that 50% of that surplus be put into the capital reserve and the other 50% for capital projects, either in the CRR or PAYGO, which is closer to what we've kind of been doing the past couple of years. The 6th item is an item that this commission approved in the 25 budget, which was a new item, and we'd like to have it formally memorialized in the policy, is the use of general fund interest income for capital projects. The discussion that you and I had talked about, Commissioner, was the idea of looking at volatile revenue sources that could be moving up and down without any kind of fault of our own. We could have a budget deficit. So we started in 25 allocating 25% of that interest income in the general fund to capital expenditures. This 26 will move it up to 30%. It'll be 5% per year, so that in many years we'll be at 100%. So that would be a new item. Next is enterprise fund policies. The city's never really had them typically approved, but it lays out very basic financial policies related to enterprise funds. It does state that our goal is to have a AA rated credit rating in our enterprise funds, and to have a 25% reserve policy for that, for the enterprise funds, which we do now have. They were up to a few years ago, and it talks about the renewal and replacement reserve policy, which the city has done typically, where we fund renewal and replacement based on the amount of the prior year's depreciation, and the process about how we go to utilize that, and if we utilize it, how we would go ahead and replenish it. And we'll be discussing that more in this budget year cycle related to water and sewer. On rate studies, it does formally say that we should perform every 5 years a rate study, which is good best practice. And then getting down in the grants area, which is a resolution that was passed, I think, 2 years ago, that every 3 years, the administration to review and make recommendations on recurring grants. Next, 27 would be, FY 27 would be the 3rd year, so we're not there yet.
Jason, you mentioned the having to do a rate study every 5 years. One of the things that this committee kind of uncovered, and I'm proud of all of my colleagues for all of us collectively kind of uncovering and supporting, was impact fees on new development had not been raised since, what, the 1980s?
I think it was the water and sewer connection fees. I think it was the 90s, but yes.
Yeah. Is there anything in here that essentially safeguards us from those things slipping under the cracks for not only years, but decades?
I don't think specifically in here, but we could add some language that says that the administration is responsible for reviewing impact fees on a periodic basis and bringing recommendations to the commission when appropriate. I think that would be fine.
If we're going to review our rate fees, I think impact fees, because essentially we allow developers to run roughshod over us paying fees that they paid in the 1990s here up until the year 2024.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. What I'll be looking for is a motion to approve this policy, but we'll show it as amended with that item. And I think I have one more item I wanted to mention was debt management policy. That we didn't technically have one, but I use this from ones that I've used in other governments. Just related to ethics requirements, debt issuance process, and then the refundings that we always like to use the 5% rule that we try to look for a 5% net present value on that. And that summarizes the financial policy before we get to the second section.
Jason, one of the things that I worry about is the percentage of salaries when I look at the full budget. So I would like to add to this that current salaries of the city of Miami Beach employees cannot represent more than, I would say, 65% of the budget right now as a target. Right now, it's 71%. And I find that starts to get frightening and scary. If you thought that 70% would be better, because we are at 71%, because I think if we were going to look at like total savings, like you're talking about, and completing capital projects, like this says, I think that needs to be a target, and that should be part of this ordinance. And I don't know how you feel about this, but certain organizations, like Miami-Dade County Public Schools, for example, it's gotten out of control. It's almost at 90% of total budget, and they can't do anything. They can't even afford to buy toilet paper in the spring for students. So, like, literally, they have to raise money for essential items. That's the direction that we're moving in, and I think that if we are going to be a fiscally responsible city, that should be top priority and part of this resolution, and then I will support it.
Yeah, it's a good point, Commissioner, and something that struck me when we went through our budget, where a municipal government does tend to be top-heavy with salaries because we provide services to our residents and to our city. I don't know what that right number is. I actually tried, ironically, doing research on this very topic. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. CFO, but one of, I read a lot of academic literature and things from rating agencies and different think tanks. One of the problems that didn't allow me to compare apples to apples is we kind of got conflated with the county, because when you read a lot of these reports, they say, okay, X percent should be for this expenditure, but a lot of local municipalities provide education funding. And that's what kind of skewed us, because the county provides that. But along with what Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez is doing, before we implement something with a specific percentage, can we conduct an analysis of benchmarking where some of our spending is versus what broader industry norms are, right? So I want to know what local governments, they tend to spend on salaries. I want to know what the kind of gold standard benchmark is for what their parks and recreation spending are. We need to determine what our priorities are. That's not to say that we can't be out of line on that, but I think we need to benchmark about what is kind of best practice.
Well, I think that doing a study like that between now and next month, as we're moving forward and modernizing, like Jason wants us to, I think it's great, because it will give us some sort of aspirational policy. So then when different departments, and this will not affect current employees, we're talking about adding on extras, right? And different areas will understand where we're going. And, it will force actually departments to really look at how they're spending money on salaries, because maybe they do need more, boots on the ground, as opposed to, an additional administrator in a certain position. And I do think that the 71% is dangerous fiscally. I think we are moving into a zone that makes me feel uncomfortable. And especially given all of these other bullets here, Jason, with the capital projects, reserves. So I would like the study done, possibly. I think your motion, can I make your motion to complete a study or analysis on what the percentage of budget is? I would like to look at other municipalities, Bell Harbor, Coral Gables. Let's look at, pick all the different municipalities in Miami-Dade County, actually. Find out what that is, what that percentage is, and build in some sort of aspirational policy so that it does not go beyond. I'm very uncomfortable with 71%. I would like our aspirational policy to be, it was 60%, like 10 years ago, right? So that is swollen immensely.
I think what you might be conflating is the percentage of the budget related to public safety. Public safety, was 60%. And if I could just add a couple of things to it, and we could look into compiling a list of the Miami-Dade County municipalities' percentage of the general fund budget that's to salary, tax, and benefits.
And I would ask.
Break
don't-
it down.
yeah, Don't just constrain that to Miami-Dade, because there is a lot of academic research on this. I've been reading a lot myself. There's probably not too much academic research on just Miami-Dade. Those are easy numbers for your team to pull. But then, look at some of these different think tanks and rating agency analysis of what industry standards are. So that'll, of course, be more broad than Miami-Dade.
If I can, so
And I would, wait, just one second, and I would break it down into what is the percentage in public safety, what is the percentage in fire, and what is the percentage of all, all employees' salaries, together, Jason. That's, I think, a nice place to start.
So if I can, on that, and that's something that we can work on. We'll probably take a little bit of time because obviously the team's tied up in this budget, which is a difficult one. But a couple things to that is, in my years of doing this, and I'm going to ask Tamika to speak to this a little bit, that metric is not one that I see used in government in general. Because I know, as we've spoken, and Commissioner, as you had mentioned, that it's people delivering services at the end of the day. So if you wanted to reduce it, you're just reducing services, and if that's fine. But as a percentage of the budget, what you would just be doing is pushing it to an outsourced situation. And I'll give you an example. Weston, Florida is a good example. Weston, as a model where almost all their services are delivered by contractors, very few employees. So if we pull them, they might be 20% or 30% or 40% of their budget being that, where most services from the building department to the finance department to many of the departments are outsourced. They don't have many employees, as it were. That's the model that they use. So there's a little bit of that that'll be in play. But if you were to say, let's go from 70 to 60%, let's say, on salary, tax, and benefits, that 10% on a $450, $500 million is a $50 million decrease in salaries. So that would be a reduction in $40 million in employees. So the question is the interest to keep the service level the same and outsource all that? It's a very complex discussion that this would drive. If it's overall about limiting the budget, which was what the next section we were going to discuss, which was Commissioner Magazine and Commissioner Suarez's elements about what things we can do to kind of bring down the level of increase going forward, that we have some elements we're going to discuss there, which is really about adding new, being wary about adding new employees. But if it's just artificially saying this is a percentage, you're just going to be in a situation where we're going to be letting people go.
Let me chime in real quick, and then I'll turn it over to you. I get what you're saying, but in good faith, it hurts me, and I can't go out to my constituents and say, well, we spend $500 million on people providing services, but we have to sit there at the end of the year and decide if we have $150,000 to pave a road. Right? What's the good of having $500 million of people providing services if we need to sit there and pick and choose if we have $150,000 to pave a road for them to provide that service, right? I think there has to be a better balance, and maybe it is the right balance, and that's what this study shows. What's the good of having all these people providing services if we don't have the money for those simple operational services for them to provide? Commissioner.
I agree with you. I was looking at the Lincoln Road surface lots the other day, and those lots have not been repaved or the wall painted in so long, and it looks terrible, and I think we're paying these huge amounts. It's not about a reduction of services. I think it's about being fiscally responsible and also more efficient. And you have to remember, Jason, that we are at a time where we're experiencing this tremendous shift and acceleration in technology and what it takes for people to, do a job. I just saw this app the other day where you can create this tremendous video, right? By just speaking what video you want into it. You can say anything that you want. It's kind of digital. The point is that we're moving toward more efficiency, right? And I do think that we need to have a target. I think this analysis is incredibly important. And I would like to see it baked into this reform, which I congratulate you on embarking on with us, because this is one of the most key parts of it, because this is the lion's share of everything that you are discussing right here.
I like the idea of possibly limiting it to a certain percentage, but, you know, that can also be abused, right? I mean, the city can raise the salary for that same person, and we're at the same budget. And so, you know, how about if my colleagues feel about a hiring freeze, where we don't hire for a certain period of time? And that would really, and I don't know if Eric's still here, but you know, maybe have a situation where if we have to hire someone and it goes through, I don't know, the commission or a consent vote or something. But I think if we really want to be serious and really, you know, cut off where a lot of our spending is on salary, how about we have a hiring freeze?
I would be on board with that. I don't know what essential positions there are out there right now, because I know that certain areas like CIP possibly and facilities management need people. So we're never going to get any projects done. I don't know what the positions are available, but I think we could do both. I think we could explore a hiring freeze outside of essential positions, potentially in some of those departments. And in addition, complete this analysis so that we understand fiscally where we are. And I'd like to see this. I think that this analysis needs to be done, and that we need to even outsource it to professional to get another opinion on how, because I would like a business, I would like several businessmen, or you know what we'll do? We could do this analysis, refer it to the budget committee, okay, and the audit committee, because there's a bunch of accountants that live in Miami Beach. They will look at this and tell us what they think of it, and then have it come back to us. Have you referred this, by the way, to the audit and the budget committee, Jason?
No, not for the budget committee, no.
Okay, I think that it needs to. My motion would be complete this analysis, refer it to the audit committee, refer it to the budget committee, and explore a hiring freeze outside of essential positions. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think we're all on the same line about wanting to be financially responsible. Ironically, I had a call with the city manager just yesterday where I said, I'm not going to sit here and tell you we're at the point of a hiring freeze, but I think we need to be very selective about the open positions that we do fill. I think we've transitioned into, I will leave it at your discretion about what is essential right now versus what is nice to have. And if there are things that were on the nice to have list and were nice to have a year ago or even 6 months ago, whether those are truly critical to fill now. Because if we get this wrong, I've said since the day I got elected, right now we need to do more with the same, or else at some point in the future we're going to be forced to do more with less. And what that means is if we make the wrong hires and we keep growing the budget and property valuations continue this trend downward, we're going to be forced to do dramatic cutbacks, right? And I don't want to get to that point. So if we're more prudent in how we're growing our budget right now, we won't have to get to that point. So I had a very straightforward conversation with the city manager yesterday about our hiring going forward. I'm not at the point where we do an across-the-board freeze at this point, but I think this conversation makes very clear the directive that, you know, I don't want to say if the building department, we all recognize that needs reform, and we need more resources there. I don't want to be too broad with a hiring freeze, but if there are things that were just kind of in the wish list that would have been nice, but we've gone 25 years as a city and we haven't needed that position, maybe now is not the time to add it.
So shouldn't we mandate that though? I mean, I don't necessarily feel comfortable leaving that to the city administration. I think, you know, we should, as the elected officials that are going to be fiscally responsible, I think we should set that policy, and then they follow.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a policy, maybe it could be a resolution that comes through this next city commission meeting, right? Because a policy is something that kind of more broadly, this is going to travel for years or decades, but if you wanted to work on something through the city attorney that mirrors kind of the thoughts that we both shared for June, I'd certainly.
I just want to jump in here. Number one, I see there's two parts to this item. And there's the part where our commission over the years, over the decades, generations of commissions that have sat here have adopted strong financial policies on reserves, on surpluses, on capital funding with the goal of safeguarding our fiscal health. Without consolidating those, they risk being forgotten and inconsistently applied. So I think that this comprehensive framework ensures that those values are preserved and institutionalized into our budget process. So that first part, I think it's very important. When we look at the GFOA and what the GFOA says, they always kind of like raise a red flag once you have, a 75% to 80% of your salary going towards 75 to 80% of your budget going towards salaries. And that's when it starts to threaten your capital projects. It starts to threaten your reserves, your ability to fund certain services. Certainly, we want to be, I think this body wants to be more conservative than any standard set by the GFOA. And that's where I think the direction of this conversation is going. We should be, in fact, putting up those safeguards so that we don't overextend ourselves, that we're so top heavy that we're not able to fund capital projects.
Well, can I respond to that?
Sure.
If he's done, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think that there has to be some guiding percentage that informs every director's department, so that when they do begin to hit that number, a bell goes off and they say, okay, now, we got to reorganize or become more efficient or change, the way, or change the way the department is run. I find in many cases, we are top heavy. We are. So I look forward to seeing it.
What I do think is that, a lot of times, who grows the government? A lot of times we grow the government. David's laughing. And then when there are ideas and tough decisions to be made to scale back the growth, it doesn't happen. And our colleague brought up a lot of these points earlier in the year, and they're tough conversations to be had. What I do think, moving forward, is that whenever you fund something, you're taking away from something else, and we're usually taking away, I guess, from surpluses,
Capital program. Yeah.
from capital programs. And I think as we look at new positions, when we create new positions, we need to say, okay, are there old positions that were created in the past that may have been needed in the past that are no longer needed? What are the measurable outcomes of every position in our city? Did we 20 years ago create a position that is still there, that perhaps the need is not there anymore, but now the need is in pressure cleaning, just for an example, or something else?
So how do we determine that? Right?
Well, that's where we have city administration to determine that.
So if I can add, I'm going to ask Tamika to add in a bit here, because, as I mentioned, this item was really two. One was just a standard set of, governmental financial policies. The second was related to, I think, most of the issues that the committee has been bringing up, which is really about how do you restrict, the increases in the budget. And that's done, I would I would recommend that it's not specific to a salary, tax, and benefits percentage. It's just the overall budget. If it's, we want to decrease it, we can go ahead and decrease it because it could be staffing, it could be studies and things along those lines. So the direction from the commission, which we are getting ready to get into the heat of this budget process, is saying we want to cut this number, we can go down through that process. There's many different mechanisms than to just say looking at salary, taxes, and benefits. But I wanted
That's the
to
biggest,
ask.
but that is the biggest chunk, right?
Correct, and that may be, but I want.
Is that normal for every?
Yes,
government?
it's very,
What's the
it's,
average? What is the average for a government? Because it'd be good to, you mentioned Weston earlier.
Yeah.
What do other cities? We have 34 cities in Miami-Dade County. What is it, 70-something in South Florida?
I know 34 in Miami-Dade County. I know
Right.
that one.
There's over 400 in Florida.
Yeah.
How are all these cities measuring up as it relates to their budget against salaries? How much of their budget is dedicated to salaries? And I think we need to understand, are we in line with other governments? And even if we are, do we want to be more conservative so that we really protect ourselves knowing what's coming in the next fiscal years?
So I prefer to wait till we have the study. From my experience, we're about the same. I think one of the biggest drivers of the cost is also pension, which we don't have necessarily control over. That number comes in as a surprise to us each year as it comes to you, because it just depends on the benefits we've approved in the CBAs and also the performance of the market.
But that's
So
also a
it's-
function of how many people we hire, correct?
Yes.
The more people we hire, the more pension you have.
The more people we have, the more benefits we approve, and also the performance of the stock market, because the dollars are invested. So that's a wild card, which I would recommend we have an aspirational goal, because when the pension annual requirement comes in, we do not have a choice but to fund. We would have to make cuts somewhere else.
If I can add, so if we can, I'll ask Tamika to go through the fiscal responsibility measures, which specifically was requested by the resolution Commissioner Magazine passed, but it was in the spirit of Commissioner Suarez's interest. What these are, as Tamika will go through these, are basically when we are going through the budget process. Typically, this year, as you saw that went out with the LTC when and the chair had mentioned early that we're in a situation where our current service level, we're in a deficit going forward. And we feel comfortable we might get back to black with the July 1st numbers. But either way, in my couple of years I've been here, there's been a surplus. And it's what do you do with that surplus? And you could either lower the taxes, you could add dollars to the capital, you can add operating expenses with people and things like that. And some of the recommendations we have here are about, okay, in a year in which there is a surplus, let's put some guardrails in there. These are recommendations because these are guardrails you'd have to live by at the end of the day. To say, okay, well, if we haven't met our capital requirement goal, an X percentage of that surplus should theoretically be put aside so that future commissions won't spend that, as it were. But Tamika, if you could walk through some of those items we have,
Okay,
a couple
so
recommendations.
this is on page
But this is,
280.
again, just so that we're all in focus here, I think our biggest concern is the spending money, not how to spend our surplus money.
Yeah.
Right? I mean.
That to me is
that's-
insignificant.
Well, this is two things. So I think one, this is going to be discussing about additional expenditures, whether it's adding it through the budget process or there's some of the items are related to mid-year, which we have, almost every month we have them. The other one about if you wanted to cut the budget, that would have to be a direction from the commission to say, the budget is X, we presented the current service level be X, and say, no, we want to cut $20 million or something like that. And then, or a dollar percentage, whatever it is, and the administration would come back with a list of recommendations how we would meet that budget policy.
Let me just
for the
ask,
year.
how much are these mid-year expenditures?
Well, this year so far, we've appropriated about 1.4 million off the general fund reserves for mid-year.
And about the 200, how much of it was recurring? 200? Do you remember how much of it was recurring? Most of it was one time, but there was some staff added.
No, I don't want to say.
Okay.
I just had 1.4 in total.
Can I just add one thing?
Because it's 1.4, but usually, I think it's something that we need to be budgeting as part of our budget. I think it's unrealistic to expect that a city of our size, with the amount of activity going on, that you're not gonna have these mid-year, budget situations where people are gonna come, things that we do need to support or we should support. I think we should be budgeting for that rather than it coming from our reserves. Because in reality, when we look at the size of our budget, that's a very small part of our budget.
Oh, I can say that 2 years ago, the commission approved a recurring addition to reserves of $3 million, approximately $3 million. It was $3,028,000 specifically, to be funded to add to reserves during the budget year, which was new to the city, which was good, at the end of the day. But effectively, that would be probably, where when you're making these mid-year things, you're just reducing that amount to reserve. So,
And that's not
so
good.
effectively, it is budgeting that. Not that we would necessarily recommend it, but if that's what the commission is approving these mid-year ones, that's where it would kind of come from.
And that's where these conversations get difficult, where I'll use the Sunset Island Park, for example, right? We have residents there that pay a tremendous amount of taxes, and they come and say, we really think we deserve these types of enhancements to our park that total $1 million, right? So 0.1% of our budget. And we say, well, we have $500 million of salary and expenses, so you could get these enhancements 5 years from now. Those are very tough conversations to convey. So while I understand we pay 70% of our salaries to provide services, if we don't have that kind of discretionary money as things come up, as my commissioner puts it, then it becomes, do we have the right allocation aligned? Commissioner Rosen Gonzalez. And then let's move on,
yeah.
because I don't think we're going to close anything out here, but I think you've heard us loud and clear about where we'd like this to come back in a month's time.
No, first and foremost, I think it is responsible, Jason, to take surplus and add it to capital projects, because what we've been doing is taking money away from capital projects and putting it into operating. And that is not good or sustainable or solid fiscal policy. So I agree with that, but I just wanted to show you that when looking at, the recent study from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, an average is like 61, salaries and wages, 61.8% of a budget. So I think that this is a good start. And so we would have to, if I want to refer to the Budget and Audit Committee, we would have to go back to commission, and from commission refer.
Yes, if you were going to refer to committee, I would suggest budget, because that's really in their purview, not the audit, which is really about audits. But if you wanted to, yes, it would have to return to commission, then to refer it to the BAC to discuss this policy, and then also for the staff administration to prepare a percentage general fund budget on salary, tax, and benefits for them to for the BAC, and then I would suggest then returning back to FERC.
Should we
after
refer
we have
it-
the BAC recommendation.
Should we refer it to the audit committee too, so that they can take a look at it? You don't think they have any
I don't think it's
expertise
really
that
in their
could help?
purview. I don't think it's really in their purview. This is right up the BAC's alley.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
where the audit really just deals with like the finance department's annual audit and
Okay.
the OIG audits.
So my motion would be to refer it to the budget commission, ask them what they think of this policy and how we could improve upon this policy, and also bring this back to us in a couple of months. Do you think 2 months, or do you want it next month?
Well,
Couple of
if
months?
we can, we'll get it, it'll go to commission then at the June meeting, and then it'll send it to BAC. It'll get on the BAC cycle, and it would just come back whenever that would be. I don't know if that would end up in
Well-
September or
Well,
whatnot.
we need the additional analysis completed
Right, and all
by
that
your
ha- all
office.
that
You guys
work
can
has to
get that
happen
done?
too, so
So you
it's-
want that to happen in July, or?
I think if we just let it to be referred to the BAC and then return to FERC, when the time allows, but we'll obviously get it back. We'll put this on the June commission meeting and get the clock rolling on this, because we have
You mean-
a little bit of work to get done.
You mean just put it on as a referral?
It would go back to commission as the C7 referral to BAC.
Okay, well,
basically.
let's start there, and then I would also I would bring this back here in September, because, Jason, you need time, right?
I just don't want to, if it's okay, I would prefer not having a timeline on getting back to FERC, because it has to go to BAC, then the BAC has to give its recommendation, and then we would bring it to FERC. I just don't know if that would be
Okay,
July
so
or September.
whenever,
but
okay, so without a time
Yeah,
constraint on
and
it.
remember, most of the elements that are in this current comprehensive financial policy already exist in standing resolutions, so there isn't a clock, I guess, as it relates to most of these items that are here, because most of these things we're already doing. But if that's fine on that, I don't know if we wanted to continue, because there was the second part of this item related to Commissioner Magazine's item on the fiscal responsibility measures related to, and they are, I think, important to hear because these are specifically policy recommendations or items to take it upon yourself when as we're developing this upcoming 26 budget process. So I think you may want to hear these.
I think it would be good for all of us to attend the budget committee hearing, because I know that there are several, long-term CPAs and people that serve on the budget that have a lot to say, and sometimes they scream at me, especially about the fact that we've been taking, taking money away from capital and transferring it into operating. I hear that a lot of complaints about that.
Yeah, and if I can, just before I really do want Tamika to go through that, but I just want it to be understood that in the past couple of years, the commission, and with Tamika and I's, recommendations have been taking some measures to be fiscally responsible when it comes to the elements I think a lot of you are speaking about, which is, keeping that growth in there. The fact that the commission approved setting aside $3 million of that operating budget to go to reserves, which is basically unspent. You're just saying, we're not gonna spend that $3 million. That was good. $1 million going to capital reserve, that's new. That was passed a year or two ago, and that's positive. This commission just passed this current budget cycle that the percentage of the general fund interest income, which is going to be $2.4 million, that's more going to capital. So the percentages of dollars going to capital has been increasing over the years, and the commission has been, through the administration's recommendations, moving towards that, I think, towards that concept that this committee is talking about getting operating dollars and getting that into the capital program. But absolutely, we'll show a motion to return to commission to refer this policy to the BAC, along with an analysis of the percentage general fund budget on salary, tax, and benefits, and then return to FERC with BAC's recommendation.
Excellent.
So if I can show who would make that
Commissioner,
motion.
we have public comment? I'm making the motion.
Okay. Sorry, I
Yeah,
think
just
there's.
your public comment.
Seconded by
Did you want to take public comment?
Yeah, I always do.
Okay.
Larry Schaefer, please unmute yourself.
Larry,
Hello.
welcome.
Thank you guys for hearing this. I know this is a combination of Joe's item and David's items, and I think there's also just a variety of items related to financial accountability and really starting to take a look at, can we tighten our belt before times get bad? So this is fantastic news that the administration and every elected official is really behind these efforts. I would like to see if the Budget Advisory Committee meeting is going to be available on Zoom so that we can see what's going on in there. But once again, thanks for doing all this.
Thank you.
So the Budget Advisory Committee meetings are hybrid, so they meet in person. People are invited to come, but we also have a Teams link, so people can.
Thank you for your work on those.
Yep.
Okay, so we have Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez made that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner, we have one more comment.
Oh,
Yes.
Joanne Moore, please unmute yourself.
Hi, Johan. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon or good morning still, everyone. Thanks for your discussion. I wasn't actually signed in to listen to that, but found it so fascinating. I'm glad I'm not in your seats. Since it is apparently unlikely or uncertain if you will reach item NB30 today, but as it relates to the meta-analysis that I see you all engaging in, I can only echo Commissioner Magazine's words back to him. And trust me, I'm not advocating cutting any staff positions or anything, though there may be redundant ones. But I would argue that irrespective of other obligations, we need to make sure that our most vulnerable residents concentrated in historic districts in contributing buildings are not forced out of their homes due to unaffordable utility rate increases. So I would just add that back into your broader discussion. Please do not throw out the baby that is NB30 when you get to it with the bathwater that may in fact be excess fat to be cut. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
thank you. And then all in favor?
Aye.
We'll show it passed 3-0, but I still, that was the main element. And Tamika, please walk us through. And these are elements for you, I think, for the committee to listen to and consider, policy recommendations as we look for guidance, going through this budget process. And it's not only this budget process, it's really kind of going forward also. And some of it could end up being incorporated into the policy. Tamika.
All right, so the first recommendation we have is that any surplus that we have during the budget process, so right now we have a policy that at year end, any excess be used for first the reserves and then for capital. So what we're recommending in the budget process that we're going through now, any surplus, if any, at this point, we actually have a deficit. But we are hoping by the July 1st values come in, we may have a small surplus. So one recommendation is to just transfer all of that to capital in, following what you all are recommending. So that would reduce our ability to have enhancements. That would be a hard pill to swallow, but it would be transferring more of our surplus to capital versus using it for new operating expenses.
Yeah, Jason, would it make sense to say that is automatic, given that our reserve levels are at X amount, which is an adequate level, right? We don't want to.
And that would be, to that, I think to that point is if you put a guardrail on it to say that in a year in which there is a surplus, available in the budget, assuming the city has met its reserves requirements and met the 5% capital funding goal, then, the surplus can be utilized for whatever purposes. If you haven't met both of those requirements, which we always meet the number of years since I've been here, we've always met the reserve, but we haven't met the 5%, that it could be 100%, you could say 75%, so let's say 75%. Say, okay, the preliminary budget the city manager will provide in July, 75% of that surplus must go to capital project until such time as we meet the 5% goal. And then the commission obviously always will and always should have the authority to, override that or make changes to it. Say, look, this is a really important thing this year, and let's take a little bit less from capital as an example. So that's one of the possible recommendations for you to look at is in the years in which we don't meet the reserve requirement, which we have typically since I've been here, but the 5% capital hasn't been met in many, many, many years. You could direct the policy to say that the preliminary budget is presented with X percentage of the surplus added to capital projects.
Yes, I think that's critical as long as we have the caveat that our reserve levels are at.
Right, those two guardrails. If you meet both of those, if both of those are met, we're able to say, yes, we've met both of those goals, then the preliminary budget could show the surplus, being recommended for other purposes. And I also believe that either way would probably assume that some percentage would go towards capital. So I think that's a really good one, but there's a few more.
Yeah, so the second one addresses what happens to the budget during the year outside of the budget process. So what our recommendation is that if there's any budget enhancement that would require a budget amendment, before it gets approved, there should be some strategic discussion about how this new expenditure is gonna be funded moving forward, particularly for the recurring expenditures. So either what programs would we cut in order to afford this new program based on a balanced budget, or is there a recurring revenue that we could generate in order to cover the cost of the new program?
So to that point, we currently have our 25% goal met, 2%, 2 months emergency, 1 month of contingency reserves in our general fund. So whenever you're doing those mid-year amendments, and 50,000 for this or 100,000 for this, which are all worthy things, I'm sure that come through, just don't live in the budget cycle. We dip into that contingency reserve a bit, and then at year end we replenish it with any general fund surplus that we may have, which typically we always do. I think what the item here is that instead of dipping in the reserve, there could be a requirement, and I know Commissioner Suarez championed and pushed through an ordinance change that made items that have expenditures that don't go to FERC beyond the R7 resolution. So there has to be an open discussion. They're not there. So that was, one thing I think towards that concept. This might take it a step further, which is a bit tough, but it might be something to say, I want a $50,000 grant to give to XYZ, and my proposal is to take it from this location. That's a very difficult one, but it's one that could be considered. I think
For the next fiscal year.
It would be up to the commission, but the concept could be right there. It's I'm 50,000 because this is very important, and maybe this organization is a little less, or we're going to cut back on this versus this. So it might have to be an addition subtraction one. This is a very difficult concept, but again, we were asked to give some concepts about how we limit
This is for recurring grants, correct?
It would be anything. I mean, one time or recurring. Again, this is just a concept. This is probably one of the more difficult ones that are listed here. Sure. So I think the idea is if there's an item that says, I want to give a grant, a one-time or a recurring, whatever it might be, an expenditure of $50,000, let's say, that the commissioner is required to propose a cut of reciprocal amount.
So you're saying that there's just one pie, and
Well, it's just
you-
the
you
general
have-
fund, and you're
right,
saying,
you-
I want to add 50,000, well, where commissioner are you proposing to take the $50,000 from? Now, typically, like I said, we take it from the general fund reserves, and we have very healthy reserves. And it has never been an issue in my 3 years here that where we haven't been able to replenish that at year end. These aren't, in the grand scheme of things, I think, Tamika mentioned we're like $1.4 million, which may to some people seem like an extraordinary amount of money, but when you're talking about a $450 million general fund budget, it's not, a ton. We have generated through the Q2 about
4.7.
$4.7 million surplus. So we're generating a surplus this year. That's where it's really coming from. Again, these are.
It's a good idea. I'm curious, what are the other ideas?
All right, so the third one we actually mentioned at the budget retreat last week, and that is if we have any fee waivers or any sponsorships that the city is doing, we would recommend that they're only for 3 years. Some are just 5 years, some years just constantly recurring. We'd recommend that they be limited to 3 years, and then only if it's on an off-season date. So if it's off-season, we need to fill our hotels and the restaurants, those could continue. But for the ones that are actually in our peak season, we would only sponsor and waive the fees for 3 years maximum.
So I think the concept there is, maybe is it only for new organizations, new programs that come out, and we want to help them live. It's a good organization running a good event, but we're going to give you 3 years worth of fee waivers, but after that you have to live on your own. Every time that there's a fee waiver, that is lost revenue to the city, which is being impacted by
How much do we
taxes.
lose a year on that?
I don't have it with me.
Yeah, well, we can look into that, but
So Jason, would it make sense actually to break out for-profit events versus nonprofit events, right? So I think that makes a lot of sense for some of these extravagant events on the beach, like Food and Wine, where they're generating profit. And once they get established, I think my friend and colleague Commissioner Fernandez put it a couple of days ago in a meeting. Once they kind of get up and running on their own, they should be forced to kind of tread water. But if these are like a nonprofit entity, right, there's no really like, okay, well, get yourself established and, then kind of start walking on your own.
Sure.
Does it make sense to bifurcate that?
That's absolutely the purview of the commission.
Yes, well, for the fee waivers, we went back to 2020. Till today, we've waived about $4.9 million.
So, that's about 5 years, 4.5 fiscal years.
$1 million a year?
Yeah, so that's lost, that's lost revenue. And again, every single one individually, without context I absolutely believe is important. These events provide good services to the city residents, but it's just, it's an idea to think about if the commissioner wanted to have some kind of policy related to fee waivers and putting some kind of limitations on those.
What's the next idea?
So yeah, this is the last one, and this actually was, the conversation
He's going to
started.
be disappointed this is the last one. I see him enjoying this.
Well, this one is a big one. We actually started the discussion at last week's workshop where we are going to, and we're working with all the departments. We gave them some homework to give us a list of their programs, and we're going to have us first and then have the commission review and prioritize what we want. What are our major functions, and what do we want to be, or who do we want to be? We're a public safety city, and what else are we doing that's above and beyond what other municipalities actually do right now? So we are going through what we call a program budget, and we're looking at our actual programs, how much it costs us right now in the 26 budget, the number of FTEs that are being funded with those. And so we're going to make recommendations at the July FERC when we go through the budget of possible programs with possible position cuts.
So if I can add to that, I think this goes to what Commissioner Fernandez brought up and discussed. And I know Commissioner Magazine, you were supportive of this concept, which gave us the work, Tamika's team, to have to go back and do this work with all the departments, was what are, give us a list of, not that we're necessarily recommending the cuts, but just here, what are a list of what we believe are non-core municipal things that we've gotten ourselves into. If you look at this as a business, if we look at it as a big corporation with lots of divisions and departments and things like, are we, we turned ourselves into like a General Electric, right? We're in like 19 different lines of business. Some are core to your responsibility, right? Like police and fire and code compliance. But there's definitely been programs over the years, whether from the administration or through elected officials over the decades, that we've gotten into certain lines of business, let's call it, if we use some business terminology, that are not necessarily core to what a municipal government typically provides. Doesn't mean they're not good services, delivering great programs to people, but they may not be considered core municipal services. We may be working in a realm that another government is working in, or the private sector. So that is something that we, because Commissioner Fernandez had brought that up during the retreat, and Commissioner Magazine kind of seconded that, and we went ahead and did that work, and we'll be presenting some of that information at the July FERC budget workshop, which is really on the operating, just to kind of give you a menu of like, by the way, here's the things that we find that are, kind of out of the typical. Now, I'll bet you go through that list, and one of the 7 will say, this is on everything we'll say, this is absolutely core. So it will probably not be unanimous. And it isn't, again, this list is necessarily going to be a list of recommended cuts, but it was an informational item, and it could be programmatic if there's a saying, say, hey, I want to curtail the budget. I don't want to increase it by X. I want to cut something. That might be the first place that you go look at that isn't cutting core services. So there isn't necessarily an action on this, but we've given you some ideas.
So Jason, we talked, it's a good point where we kind of reevaluate, and we mentioned that we didn't even know really that impact fees weren't adjusted since the 1990s. I know a government really can't do a zero-based budgeting, but do we have this system in place where it's so large that our staffing hasn't evolved as our city has evolved, right? Are there things that were put in place 20 years ago that are just kind of continuing because that was the priority 20 years ago, and we haven't kind of done a fresh reevaluation? Is Milton sitting out there in the basement somewhere from Office Space with his red stapler? But 100 Miltons, how can we do something that isn't zero-based budgeting, but we're doing kind of a refresh and reevaluation of, show us your budget, I'll show you my priorities, right? So we grow due to new priorities and where we are as a city, but do we ever right size, right? We just grow, but do we
Get rid of the old priorities.
exactly?
If I speak to a couple points, and I'll ask Tamika to chime in on that. I think you're going to get that a little bit through the programmatic budget on non-core. So I think that's going to answer to that, a lot. 2, if we end up in a situation of the black where we are forced to recommend cuts that come from the administration, you'll probably see some of those elements. And you're absolutely right. They may be 3 commissions ago, said we should be doing this police detail, this code detail, this parks program that maybe isn't delivering, to the best of the services, but it was directed by commission, it was funded, and we're doing that. So I think that when you ask for those cuts, if we're in that situation, that would probably be some of the first areas we go. But I would be remiss in not mentioning that, through the years, and I'm just speaking in my 2.5, 3 years that I've been here, the legislation that comes from the commission drives a lot of that work. So, we often have, this, we showed at the retreat that the number of workers added that were non-public safety were 12, 14, something like that, over the last 5 or 6 years, which was a surprise to me when that data was put together, and said, wow, we've done a lot more. So if you look at all of the legislation that we are getting directed to do, whether it's creating of LTCs, manning of committees, or doing studies, all of that work is being done almost by the same group of people at the end of the day. So to that is often we have to reprioritize internally and say, hey, you were doing this, we need to do this now because commission is directing us to go do this analysis. So Tamika, do you want to add anything on that?
I would just add that I think the last time that we did a deep dive into the budget and our positions was in COVID. So because of COVID, and we had to freeze hiring, we had to make some reductions in our expenditures, capital expenditures. we did go on and use the program budget. So the document that I emailed to you all after the budget retreat actually has the program budget that we used without having to go to the departments to actually just make freezes. We eliminated positions. Some positions have come back, as I mentioned. Parking, for example, cut several of their positions, put a lot of people on furlough. They've come back over time, not necessarily to the level prior to COVID, but that was the last time that we did use the program budget to do some strategic cuts.
Jason, if, so for the hiring freeze item that I'd like to propose, is that something that I'd have to?
I think that there was discussion of the chair that you would discuss with the city attorney and bring something to the June commission meeting.
Can it be ready by June? Okay.
And then,
Are we looking as something, you know, a short-term, hiring freeze? What's the time period? Because like, for example, we have, I think this year in our police budget, I think we have 18, positions that we were looking to create. Is that, or, yes, and I know that we're in the process of also achieving, full staffing, which is something we haven't had a very long time in our police departments. So are we looking at non-public safety positions?
I think possibly anything that we have that is not currently budgeted for.
Okay.
That's where I would start. So.
yeah, and if I can,
that's fair.
to that effect, so that's really policy. When I talk about policy, the top, in my opinion, I guess I'm the CFO, will always say that the top policy direction from the commission is the budget. So if there's an interest in, you know, a freeze, it's through the budget to say eliminate positions at the end of the day. Because all the positions that the city manager will usually be able to hire is within that budgetary authority. But I do get to that concept that if you say not within the budget, he does have the authority to meet within the overall budget. But if the position count or that head count isn't in there, that could be, you know, say not to add any additional head count, that could be something that could be entertained. But again, that's why we always, you know, direct everything to go through the budget process. That if there's an interest in curtailing some activity, whether it's a dollar value or a number of head count and things like that, programs, we'd go through the budget process and we make adjustments based on the direction, the policy of the commission, which I do agree, you know, will change from time to time. And the last point I want to make is that in speaking to what Tamika was mentioning is, this is my third budget cycle I've been through. The first one, I started a new concept in the retreat, which was the spotlight. And it was exactly to that point, was I jokingly said, let's look at citywide grants. I said, there might be grants in there to the Vaudeville Academy, you know, a joke to like some kind of 1920s thing. I said, well, it's always been there. We just can't set the check. And that's just the way it is. So the budget's very large. And we used to have day-long retreats and everything. They've gotten smaller. But I wanted to spotlight certain areas. And that first year, we spotlighted, you know, citywide grants. Not something you would typically look at in the big budget. It's a few $1 million as an example. And we did do that. We went through that process. We highlighted all the sponsorships to events, the citywide grants that we give and things like that. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, there wasn't any adjustments downward. I think actually there were a few increases where commissioners saw and said, hey, wait a minute, we're only giving, you know, that group X, I wanted to add to it. So the administration, you know, is sensitive to that concept, and we do try to highlight those things for the commission to look at periodically. And that's something that I've, you know, really championed since I've been on here.
So Commissioner Fernandez, something along the lines of also anything that's pensionable, correct? If there's a hire that involves a pension, a salaried employee, and you know, I think there's also a lot of room for efficiency in the police department, right? And also, as well as the fire department. So I think between now and first reading, I'll work with Jason and Eric to really get a better sense of how this would look like after being baked, and then I would welcome everyone's feedback on it.
And if we can, just to wrap that up, I think some of these items that we talked about, if we wanted to put them in the policy, or we can bring those to the BAC as part of it and see, and I think this committee seemed to be very interested in that first one about, you know, directing the administration on a preliminary budget-wise to put X percentage of any surplus in a year in which you have it to capital programs until you hit those two main policy goals. And I think that we can highlight those to the BAC and see if that's one of the ones that they think is also a good idea, and bring that back to FERC.
Yeah, again, I think the direction we're moving in is we want to really make an impact. And where we spend our surplus isn't really like saving people a tremendous amount of money in taxes. We want to have a real plan for how can we be ready for the next couple of years. Speaking of, I apologies, I was out of town for the first budget retreat. I had an item, I believe, I didn't listen to the discussion, but it's very similar to this. It's limiting what we spend for next year. And I just wanted to know what do my colleagues think about that? Just not reducing spend, but just saying whatever we spent this year, we're not going to spend more next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to speak for everybody, but you've certainly heard from me, the desire to be very fiscally conscious.
And to see what are the old priorities of past commissions that might not be relevant anymore, identify, all of these costs, recurring costs that are not essential, and seeing how we can go in and do efficiencies. That's as part of, that conversation that you placed on that agenda, that's where, this concept came from.
Yes, Commissioner, that's exactly Commissioner Fernandez said. That's kind of where I think that discussion morphed into giving some direction to staff to come back with that analysis. And
So that we do hold the line on spending of what we did this year.
the request was to provide a programmatic budget on non-core municipal services. So if the commission wanted to make any adjustments down to perhaps make that number or more or less, whatever it might be, that they would have a menu of possible non-core municipal services that they can say, to get to that budget number, we're going to not do this or curtail that. Because it doesn't have to be a reduction. It doesn't have to be an elimination. It could be a curtailing.
Yeah, because one of the things, today we opened up highlighting perhaps a challenged property valuation scenario. But what we got into at the budget meeting is we actually are facing a number of different headwinds. That could be, now the property appraiser is now an elected position, and he's conveyed that he is looking to reduce, valuations. And reading between the lines, some of the Art Deco buildings seem to be kind of at the forefront of some of that commentary. And then from a state perspective, there's a committee right now. Of course, the headlines were made about talking about abolishing property taxes. Well, I think that's a bridge too far. There's certainly going to be efforts that are being made right now, actually, to rein in local government spending, and a number of different initiatives that could really tie our hands and force us to be even more conservative, because what I foresee coming out of Tallahassee is something that is going to essentially be at odds with local government's ability to collect property taxes.
Yeah, so I guess where I was getting at is how does some of my colleagues feel about actually agreeing to capping our spend and saying at all costs we are not going to increase our spend for next year. I know it's a tough cookie to eat, but tough times. Okay, you know what I mean.
I think it's responsible.
Yeah. So where does that item fall, Jason? It was at the budget retreat, and it comes back to commission, and we vote on it?
No, the retreat, it was presented at commission, and it would be, I guess it would be up to a commissioner to bring an item. Because that retreat is not technically an item where any actions can be taken. It's just I wouldn't say casual, but it's a off-site retreat where we just have an open discussion about the budget.
Okay, I'll take it from there.
And we will have, we will have a very in-depth discussion at the July FERC budget workshop, where the preliminary budget will be presented by the manager, and that would be where, if we wanted to say, okay, that number, no, we need to reduce it by X, and then we will discuss some actions about that. Tamika, did you want to?
Well, I would just add that I think your item mentioned if we could cap the budget at CPI over last year.
Yeah.
So what we presented last week is that if we did that, we'd have to cut $7.1 million from this year's budget.
Because
in
we
order
hit
to get there.
we hit 4.4, which was a little higher than we hoped, but I think it was related to, the second year of the collective bargaining agreements, which, is the expectation that second year, when we had a number of firefighters being added through the budget. So 4.4%.
Well, we
Isn't
all know
that
those
bad.
union guys they're hard hitters. They know how to negotiate against you guys.
And Jason, just to refresh my memory, we were able to put in some policies that will prevent kind of some of the mess that happened on the last day of the budget. I don't want to say mess, but some of the items that just kind of seemingly appeared out of nowhere that were put into at the last minute. We put in some policies to kind of curtail that, correct?
If you are talking about the policy where items need to go to FERC before it gets approved as a part of the budget,
Yeah.
technically,
But, or we raised the threshold for an
Right.
item that is being
Right, I think
put
there's
into
two
budget
things
for the
there.
first time.
I think there's two things now, is what I think it was Commissioner Suarez's ordinance change was that, and Rick, I know is ready to chime in if I get this wrong, because me and him went back and forth, was I think there are 2 points to it, is any item that has a dollar value, an expenditure to it, that didn't go through the finance committee
Right.
is required to be an R7 item, so it must be discussed. And because I think that was the threshold that was cut. So that was really the main thing, was you eliminated the concept that you had all of these elements in the consent agenda where it was go spend 50,000 on this, spend something on this.
Right,
Or
but there was
if it came
something-
back as a
There was
recommendation.
something prior to that, because the last budget cycle, remember, there was stuff that kind of came up on that last day, and it was like, oh, here's $1 million.
Oh, well, at the budget, at your budget hearings, your
Oh, yeah,
first and second,
it was the grants, right? For, yeah, I remember this. It was they I think Commissioner Bott wanted to just give another $500,000 to some of the. Am I off?
yeah, there was an item related to the one-time arts and culture
Yes,
grants because of the
right,
state
because
cuts.
the-
That was
the
actually
state
dealt
was
with in
cutting.
July, and I think there was a discussion that she had at the hearing about trying to amend that amount up. I think it's important.
There's also the mammogram testing that.
There was another element.
And I think that's something that, to make sure that we don't end up with these situations, if there have been allocations in the past, staff should be checking with the commission about what the commission intends to keep funded in its budget, because it's not staff's budget, it's the city commission's budget. And it's our budget reflecting the priority of those who have elected us here. And so before staff makes the decision not to include certain priorities in the budget, let's meet with the commission, let's see the feedback of the people who have sponsored this over the years, so that when we come at the budget hearings, we can determine whether we want to include this in the final budget, so that we don't have stuff like that.
I think what you're speaking.
That we've been funding, over the years, and then all of a sudden staff decided, well, we're not gonna include it in this budget, and then at the last minute, we're like, okay, well, where's the funding for that?
What I think you're speaking to is one-time elements. We have many one-time elements every single year that we have. So those don't get automatically put into the next budget for consideration. So if there wanted to be something considered year over year, the commission would have to say, let's move that from let's move that from a one-time to a recurring funding source. But we could look at providing a list at some point through the budget process, of a list of, all the one-time grants in the prior year. So that it's in one location for it. But I think it's important, to that particular point, is it's always important, as much as you want to put limitations on yourself, is that you always have the ability to override something, because the world happens around us, and it happens every day.
Yeah, I think we just increased the threshold, the voting threshold. If something hadn't been previously circulated through the proper finance committee, if it just came up during the budgeting process, that it would create maybe a 5/7 threshold. Am I thinking about that correctly, Rick?
Well, what we added to the ordinance in the last several months was that if there's an item added to the budget that will be recurring, that would require a 5/7 vote of the commission. I think that might be what you're thinking of. And then the more recent legislation was related to items that don't go to FERC can no longer go on the consent agenda
Right, as it relates
of whatever dollar value.
sorry, as it relates to the budget hearings, in my career, it's been very typical at the first hearing that there's some last little tweaks, something comes up and says, can we fit this in, I'll reduce this, or let's reduce the surplus and do that. I think that that's a purview that I think it's important for the commission to have things happen. The second hearing, that's one we would definitely, the administration would be good with it being a quick, we usually like it to be a 15, quick meeting, it's a move it second pass, just approving the prior adjustment. So yeah, at the second hearing, it would be more preferable. I always kind of say if there's speak now or forever hold your peace at the first hearing, would be good with that. But all right, so I think we have we have the motion. It was passed. We'll return this to commission to begin its route, and this discussion will be ongoing and continuous through our capital budget workshop next week, and then our operating one, which will, I'm sure, be very lively in July as we deal with, some of the policy concepts and making ourselves having a balanced budget.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Let's hear NB 18, Kitty Campus. Linda, thank you for you and your team.
MB 18, discuss purchase of a new trailer to supplement the city's Trap, Neuter, Vaccinate, Release TNVR program and the Kitty Campus. NB 18.
Commissioner Rosa Gonzalez.
Hi, guys. I would disregard the memo that is in the book here, which is an inflated price, and we have significantly reduced the cost of having an auxiliary trailer for the trap, neuter, and spaying. I will turn it over to you guys, though. I don't see the printed copy. I don't think we ever got the memo, so maybe you could explain it to us, what we're proposing. Go ahead, Linda or Holly or whomever.
So Holly, CAT Program Coordinator for the city. I also am the Director of Kitty Campus. And I'm Linda Diamond, I think I know you all already, President of Sobe Cat Spay and Neuter, and also the Chair of the Animal Welfare Committee. And I'd also like to point out, my background is in corporate America, but now my specialty is not getting paid. So all of this hiring freezes, please fire me. So the item on the table, she says, securing some additional space, cost-effective space for the Kitty Campus due to the huge success of our program. So first off, thank you all for all your support. That's why we are so successful. And our program has gotten accolades internationally, by the way. We received accolades from Mars Pet Care, as in Mars candy bars and so forth. And one of the things they mentioned in a case study that they did about the city of Miami Beach was how well the city staff support us. So that was actually highlighted in the middle of the little case study, which I was very proud of. So I know your agenda's long. I will speak in bullet points. I'm always to the point. What is the issue? Overflow. What is our solution? Mobile, I'll call them compartments, which we'll get into. So why do we have this overflow now? So we hired Joanna, the very first trapper, a year ago. She has doubled our intake numbers, which is a great problem to have. But we're bursting at the seams. And why do we even need to hold these cats? So basically what happens when someone traps a cat, whether it's Joanna or she's training a resident or it's another volunteer, we have to hold the cats until they're queued to get surgery. So we hold them at the Kitty Campus. So once they go have surgery, they have to recover. So they come back to the Kitty Campus. So that's number 2. Number 3 is we also have healthcare recovery for a lot of simple cases. So I wanted to share a couple of pictures, if you don't mind me bringing them up to you. These couple pictures are of cats with mange. It costs $20 to fix these guys. And they're walking around our streets, and they $20, and it takes literally sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes 4. But this is not a good look for our city. Our residents don't want to see these poor. They look like they have barnacles. I'll pass them up to you. You want to pass them?
What's the typical time frame for get a cat captured, spay, neuter, and then back on the street?
So it really depends on which outlet we're using to do the spaying and neutering. So I'll let you speak to more.
It's normally just a few days at the most.
And so how many cats can you hold in the trailer that you have now?
We don't have
We
a
don't have a
trailer
trailer.
now.
We
so-
have a hallway.
So here's where they're going now. So in the Kitty campus, we have 2 rooms that are, we call them treatment rooms. And then we bring cats into those rooms that we want to put up for adoption. In order to put them up for adoption, they need to be vaccinated, they need to be dewormed. So they're usually there for 2 or 3 weeks. Once they graduate, we've got another room, which is called the free roam room, where they can just run around with all their buddies and they're checked. We've done a fecal exam, everything, which we do all that in-house.
Yeah.
So, but those rooms are all full, doing our typical Kitty campus stuff. So now that we had crazy Joanna, who's very impactful. Oh, by the way, this guy, he now lives in the apogee, so don't feel so bad for him. So, where are the kitty cats now? Here's my favorite. In the bathroom. So talk about lack of privacy. And then also on the right side of Kitty campus, there was a big cement platform with a tarp on top. We've made that into a makeshift Kitty campus holding place, which is the other picture. So, I mean, this is not a hot look, right?
So how much square feet do you have now?
So we have, I think it's about 3,100 square feet.
Would it make sense?
2,400 square feet.
I don't know, would it make sense to put them in another location that's not a trailer that we have available? Maybe like a city building? 'Cause it's kind of like what we did to Fab Lab, right? I
And
mean,
we're open to moving, and our solution here is a part-time solution. So,
Yeah.
because what's happening right now is, and here's a catio we had built on the side. So here's what's happening right now. So
So how much square feet do you need? Let's
Well,
let's
if we take
reverse
it-
engineer what
If
what
we
you guys
take,
need.
well, we're looking for two trailers, and they're each 40 feet by 8 feet.
Containers.
Containers, we're calling them, we're not calling them they're
Containers.
actually
3,200.
retrofitted shipping containers that have air conditioning and such. So, and the reason why those are a good
And how much is
solution for us.
that, Brad? What is the cost of that?
I think they found costs.
Yeah, so I'll go over the cost too.
She'll get more into it.
But here's the situation, the outside cats that we all have here on this lovely outside area, we have to move them all because it's getting too hot. We have fans in there, misters in there, but we have to
Is that
move
part of
them.
the 3,100 square feet that you're
No.
talking? Okay.
By the way,
2,400 plus this, I guess. would
Hey,
be-
listen,
the second floor of the South Shore Community Center could, in essence, become a second
We
kitty
looked
campus
at that.
facility.
We looked
a few
at that,
places,
and
right?
yeah, so the issue was that was where seniors were coming in for lunch and so forth, and there was a problem with cats
If they did the second, you
Yeah.
know, if it was the second store
The
floor.
only reason I'm kind of getting at this is because, you know, the VCA,
the second floor.
the old location on Alton, moved, right? They haven't,
Right.
but that location is still there. It's for rent.
We have all their cages, they gave us for free,
Yeah,
$40,000 worth. Thank you,
But
Holly.
I believe it's 20,000 a month.
Well, that's why I'm asking what the cost is for the trailers, and then
So,
what is the
me
operating
get to that.
cost right now
So
for
the
the
trailer
lease?
cost, what we would look to do is get 2 of these containers. So one container would have just air conditioning and shelving. So that's gonna be like bare bones, and that's about $25,000. The second trailer, also the same size, 40 feet by 8 feet, this one would have air conditioning as well, but a kitchen, a sink, and a bathroom. So that's about $35,000. So then we have to worry about leveling the foundation, which is easy. It can be on dirt still, but it needs to be level. Having a sidewalk would be great and a ramp so we can push the cats in and out. So what is a sidewalk, $6,000, a ramp is $5,000. The electric, we already have some electric pulled outside, so we just need to get it piped into the 2 different locations. I don't know if we can, they would each need a 50 amp, so we need to make sure we have that enough in our building to handle that. We would need to run plumbing, but I don't know why we couldn't just tap into our existing plumbing. And I realized that the sink water and toilet water, even though it's gray water and black water, they're all considered black water in the city of Miami Beach. So they're all gonna go to the same place. And then we would need to pay for delivery and setup, $4,000, architectural and permitting. I'm not sure what pieces of this would be permitted, because I know just to have
What are you looking, on soup to nuts, what are you looking at, all in?
so $130,000 to $175,000. And then ongoing
It's
costs.
a one-time, and what's the ongoing cost?
Ongoing is just paying for the water and electric and some upkeep, so we have 10, 15,000 ongoing. So I mean, it's a really inexpensive situation, and we can plug and play with this pretty quickly. And then if we find another property, fabulous. We'll pack up and move.
Yeah, and I think just when you say trailer, it has this like negative connotation. But if you look at the sales center for Five Park, they're selling $50 million condos there, and those are quote unquote trailers. I would gladly move in there versus my humble abode.
But these are containers.
These are
We should have
containers.
Galvin.
These
And by the way,
Galvin
we
contributed
brought
to
custom-built
this.
containers.
You know, these are containers. Have some artists, make some fun.
No, those are
Deco
shipping,
on the side.
as
Yeah.
far as I understand, Brad, those are shipping containers, the Five Park Sales Gallery, right? So what I'm saying is, that it sounds like, oh my gosh, we're putting somebody in a trailer or a shipping container. But point being, you go in there and
Yeah.
I would certainly trade it for where I live, to
Yeah.
live in the shipping containers at Five Park.
Well, and in terms of visibility, so the Kitty Campus is on a property that has got a chain link fence all the way around it. The two containers would be by the side. So not very visible from the road because it's pretty far off, and then there's the chain link fence. We could also put a nice dressing all the way around the chain link fence. To the left, you have ice skating or a skateboarding scenario. To the left, you have, to this side, you have a parking lot.
I just have a question. How much square feet is it that you need?
So we've got 2,400. If you add the
What do you got? You have 3,100 square feet now, right?
2,400, and then plus our little makeshift weirdness we have on the side.
And then what is
Which
this
is,
gonna?
what is that,
What
40
would these two
to
trailers
40?
bring it to total?
So what is, do the math?
It was 8 foot by 9.
8
9
foot
foot?
by 8 foot.
I mean 80 foot, but I'm
80
sorry.
Well, 40
by
foot
eight.
by
30
8,
foot
40
by
by
8.
eight, I think.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, one at a time, please.
right? They were 40
Yeah.
feet by
40 feet by 8 feet.
right.
8 or 9 feet.
40 feet.
And there'll be two.
3,200 square feet
Right
each.
here.
So you probably need about, 3,500 square feet in total?
Yeah, and,
So
and it's
Ron,
what's also,
do we have any empty space?
No, now that we're inputting the tax collector and Anchor Garage, that was our last space.
there was a property over on around Second in South of Fifth.
That small
I think it was
house.
Washington
Yeah,
and
the
Second.
house that used to be ran by Ecom.
Yeah.
What about?
I love that little house.
I
mean,
know. I mean, we
it's
would need
really
to add to
cute.
that.
But
because that's-
am I
that's
misunderstanding something though? You have a space and you're saying you have a solution for it, right? With these containers that are able to accommodate this. Right,
And there's
at a
also some-
very cost affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also some benefits to it, and here's why. Because a lot of times when you're bringing these cats from outside, they have maybe an upper respiratory infection, which is airborne. So we like the ability to keep the adoptable cats inside, and then all the cats that are coming and going that are getting fixed that might have upper respiratory, keep them in their own
Yeah.
individual areas, so they can't, because if our whole kitty campus gets URIs, then our ability to push them and find them homes
Yeah.
just is delayed.
So probably my number one takeaway that I have from my first year and a half into office, if the cat ladies want something, give the cat ladies what they want.
They're great.
Who am I to recreate the
And
wheel
I don't
here?
even have a cat, and I just rescued a pit bull, so don't feel bad.
If that's what you want, to be honest, I got pretty nervous over the weekend reading the agenda because it was like, well, the cat ladies want something, it's $1 million. I go, how do you make those two things coexist? But to now come back at something of a $50,000 ask it, and this essentially delivers the exact results that you want. I think
130 to 175.
Yes.
170.
Don't denote my
Sorry,
number.
I was talking per
And this
container.
comes
And,
out of the
and
public-
realistically,
Give
it
a
could,
discount.
the staff is giving me a look at it, could be a little bit extra. It could be anywhere between 225 and 250.
And this comes out of what budget?
It's funded through sanitation, right, Jason, currently?
Well, we'd have to, we would recommend, obviously, I think the motion would be to return to commission, to be considered as part of the 26 budget process. Typically, the cat-related programs are funded through the sanitation fund, which is at this point, it's a massive structural operating deficit. So we would have to decide whether we want to continue pushing that or to be funded through the general fund.
I would like this to be a budget amendment at the next meeting in June so that we can get started on it because these are immediate needs. Those cats right now are in a tent where it's extremely hot and they're stuck in plastic. And I mean, we allocated funds for another cat trapper. The program is successful and we can't just say we're going to do it in a couple of years because these are our Four-Legged Friends, Jason, and we need
So
to
I have a
find
question.
funds
So I have a question on
to
this.
fund it right
But
now.
I have a question on this. I have a question.
Yes.
So, okay, so now let's just walk through the policies that we were just thinking
I
of
think,
adopting.
and I think we're all in agreement that we
Yeah.
want to help. the
Yeah, this
cats.
isn't,
We
this
just,
is
how do we fund
important.
it?
This is important. So let's say we would have adopted the policies we were just discussing. At next week's meeting, or whenever we have our next commission meeting,
We'll figure out that better. So.
Chris, whenever we have the next meeting, if someone brings a mid-year item to say, we want to fund this, it's 100 and how much thousand?
We'll say, I mean,
One-
no more than 225, we'll say anywhere between 175 and 225.
225, okay. So if whose item is this?
This item is Commissioner Rosen Gonzalez.
So if Commissioner Rosen Gonzalez comes back at the next meeting and says she wants to do a mid-year budget amendment for 225 to fund this year, she would have to say, but this is where I'm getting the money from. This is what I'm not gonna fund in order to fund this.
That was one of the financial fiscal responsibility measures we discussed and was referred to BEC for more
So
discussion.
that means you're gonna have to give the commission more transparency as to the city's accounts and funds in order for us to be able to determine where are we not gonna fund something in order to fund something else? Because we don't know where the different pots of money are, and this has always been the city's administration's responsibility.
Well, I
So
think they're big costs.
Commissioner Rosen Gonzalez, like, where would we, what would we not fund in order to be able to fund this? Because we need to
I mean, I
act
never
like if the
said
policy
that I
exists.
supported that policy, and I don't support that policy because this is a one-time expense. It is not a recurring expense. Not all expenses are created equal, and certain expenses are more important than, have like a certain expediency to them that others don't. So a one-size-fits-all doesn't work, especially with one-time expenses. So I would not be in accordance with cutting one of my colleagues' funding measures or some community program to, expand another program, which is why I'm saying that where we need to cut in the general fund is at this 71% of salaries, and reduce that amount so that we don't have these other issues. Because what we're doing is we're playing around with a very small pot of money in relation to the overall budget. And that's the direction that we need to give Jason, because right now, salaries are at 71%. And I would like to say, this is not going to affect any existing employee. It's just a question of looking at your budgets moving forward and seeing how you're going to organize your departments efficiently. Because that's where, it's not a cutting of services, Jason. It's looking at current positions available, because we're talking tens of millions of dollars versus, tens of thousands of dollars. So that, I'm not in accordance with that policy, which is why I referred it to the Budget Committee, because I'd like to attend that hearing, explain my concerns, and I don't support that policy, Commissioner Fernandez. I'm not gonna cut, iguanas for cats, or, security and safety for cats, or turtle funding for cat, do you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense to me.
I just, it's just a good opportunity because we were just talking about these policies just now. And they're important policies, Jason, but, it's gonna be then incumbent upon us to identify, something important like this. I mean, does the administration support this request?
Yeah, it's a critical need.
So it's a critical need, it's a critical need that a commissioner wants to bring for a budget amendment, but then the policy being recommended to us by the administration is saying, yeah, but you, the commission, have to find the funding source for it. You, the commission, need to say where we need to cut in order to fund it. Jason, that's what your policy is.
That's just a recommendation, right?
Yeah.
There was a number of policy recommendations. I did mention that was by far the most draconian one, and I knew that would be one of the most difficult. And if you were going to move forward in that kind of concept, I could see it being curtailed to recurring, perhaps.
One time may seem a little too much. I can
Recurring.
understand recurring. It certainly makes a little bit more sense. But just back to this particular item, the sanitation is at a deficit. Is that because we haven't figured out the waste hauler situation yet?
There's a couple of elements to it. One is the commission in the last budget cycle added a number of additional programs, which kind of pushed it further down that line. But from the revenue source perspective, there were some adjustments made. Commissioner Bott championed an adjustment related to the roll-offs, which will take time for us to recognize and see how that really has an impact. But I think to the franchise fee percentages we discussed, I think that was last budget cycle's spotlight during the retreat, was that we talk about when those contracts are up and coming backwards, we're in a situation where we could be doubling the franchise fee rate.
Right, not to get too off topic, but where are we with that? When do we come to an agreement of where we're doing a single hauler or what we're doing now, which is multi-hauler? Because
Going from cats to waste.
Coming with you.
I mean, to address that point, since there was a recommendation last year to look at if there were any hybrid possible scenarios out there and to hire a different consultant to analyze that. At that point in time, once that went out through, procurement process, the only company, firm that submitted a proposal was the existing one, and there was a specific direction to not want to use the existing one. So we didn't accept that proposal, and the manager did not sign off on it.
So where are we right now?
So the actions that we have on the record today are the vote that the commission took back in March of 2024, which was to go 7-0 to a single hauler. But after that, there has not been really any movement. And in fact, we have to make a decision. Are we going to go with a single, or are we going to go with a non-exclusive?
Yeah, and that decision could potentially double our franchise fees and bring the budget of sanitation back into the black.
It can. To what extent, I couldn't stand here and tell you today, but it will certainly have a positive impact on the sanitation.
And when we're talking about a structural deficit here, we're talking on an annual basis. Overall,
Recurring.
Overall, though, while it's declining, we still have a surplus in the sanitation fund. Is that correct?
Correct. We're utilizing the reserves.
So if this is a one-time expenditure, I wouldn't have any issue taking this from the sanitation.
So I think if again, to help land this, the question is, I think that there's interest in accepting this, is will this be a favorable recommendation for the TNVR program trailer to be considered as part of the 26 budget process? Or is this something that?
No, my motion is to refer this to the June commission with a positive recommendation and fund it immediately with a budget amendment. In the amount of, let's go for 225, so that you have enough for electric and plumbing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if it's a budget amendment, where does that money come from? It comes from the general fund?
It would come from the sanitation fund reserves.
Okay.
So I'd be fine doing it from the sanitation, right? Not the general fund.
Right.
Although we have a declining surplus, we still have an ample surplus in the sanitation fund. I would be very concerned if this was ongoing expenses, but given these are one-time expenses, I think we're able to essentially weather that from the sanitation fund.
But I think it's important when the item comes, when it needs to be identified which funding source is coming from. Because for us as a commission, okay, we put this, but the items is every item by ordinance is supposed to have a fiscal impact statement. And what I've been used to, I remember at the county, you had an item like this would come forward. It would have a fiscal impact statement saying, this is the cost of this. Okay, it's coming from this fund. This is the current balance on this fund. This is how much this is gonna cost, and this is gonna be the remaining balance on that fund, so that we can budget ourselves appropriately. Because if these things just get put on the agenda and we don't know where it's being paid from and the balance on those funds, then people just keep on putting and putting and putting, and we don't know what's left. And so, we really do need the administration to be more informative of the impact that these items are having, to identify where they're being paid from and the overall balances, so that we know the impact that it has.
So the motion would be Commissioner Rosen-Gonzalez to budget amendment for the June meeting, and it's going to come from the sanitation fund.
Yes.
Okay.
In the amount of, we're gonna do 225.
If I can, because what actually always, what we need to do is, it goes back to commission with a favorable recommendation to expend up to $225,000 for the TVRN trailer. The commission would then, the whole commission would need to approve that. Then we come back with a budget amendment. Budget amendment is a public hearing, so we need the commission to approve this new expenditure. And we would always make sure on the items that the administration does that says to expend dollars, that we would show that funding source.
I'm
And
gonna
we will
put
make
it,
sure that.
well, I'm gonna put it on the consent agenda, because I don't know if you guys remembered at the last meeting in the morning, we had an item.
You can't do,
If I may.
Yes,
that
we
you
can,
wouldn't
because
have
at
to
the
do.
last meeting,
You
I don't
wouldn't
know if,
need to.
I don't know if you remember, Jason, at the last meeting, we had an item on the agenda that was, $100,000 for sealing, the Pietra Portuguesa and acid washing, and we made that motion in the morning, and then we funded it in the afternoon, so we can absolutely do that, I believe. We did it last time, don't you remember?
well, I think we just agreed that we can't put anything on consent, right? But
Well, I mean, if we,
I'm gonna-
if it's a critical need, the thing is, you know, I don't want it to just get, we have this need right now, it's getting really hot, I would like to
Listen,
get
Commissioner,
facilities.
I
Yeah,
think,
you
I
agree.
think you at least have 4 people up here
Okay.
who are gonna be very supportive of it. But I just don't think that you can put it on consent anymore, right? It has to be an R7 item, and then it has to be called, and then, you know, we vote on it. Is that?
But we could call it in the morning as
Yeah,
a
we could all
time
say
certain.
so.
If I may, if I recall, the Pietra Portuguesa was actually going to be a referral, but then because there was a budget discussion on a budget amendment, you made a motion to amend the budget amendment to go ahead and include it.
I'm gonna let Commissioner.
And then there was discussion as a
I
result.
think the one thing we can do to.
I'll co-sponsor it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's all 4 co-sponsor. I don't know where Commissioner Fernandez is, but that you'll
Okay.
have 4 votes.
Co-sponsor the kitty trailer?
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so
there
you
you
have
go.
4 co-sponsors, and just, could we make it happen? There's a budget amendment at every single meeting. I mean, I've never seen a meeting without one, so I would like it added to the budget
And I think, and
amendment.
I'll ask Rick to help me out here, if I got this off, since this went through finance, this can go as a consent resolution. The department would prepare this.
Yes.
And would send it back. The resolution, if it isn't pulled, assuming it isn't, would pass. And then, assuming we have an operating budget amendment, then on the floor, you would request then an amendment to the amendment there.
Okay, so we're gonna make an amendment to the amendment. Yes,
Yeah, we would just ask that the number is not to exceed 250.
not to exceed
Can I just
250?
ask something about
Okay.
this? And I know that we have these conversations all the time, but just looking, pull up Amazon, and you can order these prefab homes. I would live in these 370 days a year. These are beautiful, literally beautiful,
You can move in.
for $25,000. How,
We're gonna trap and neuter you too.
whatever works. Listen, if you guys have the votes to do that, then call the votes.
We'll keep looking at that.
But he does bring up an interesting point. I mean, some of these prefab homes are very cost effective, $40,000.
Right, I don't think it's necessarily that. I think we'll be able to find the numbers as it relates to that, but you just have to understand, anything that is there for longer than a period of 6 months is considered like a permanent structure. So there's certain permitting and things that we need to go through the building department to obtain for that. So we
Who
have
do we pay
to
for the
factor those in
permits?
as well.
Us?
Yeah, we have to get
It's
foundation.
insane.
We shouldn't have to
Foundation
pay for our own
permit.
permits. It's
Like, that-
ridiculous.
It's insane.
It's ridiculous.
You're telling me that I can come up with for $30,000, have this prefabricated home that it looks like the Taj Mahal, but we have to pay ourselves to permit something that's going to be there? Like, this is insanity.
I think
Why
the
don't-
employee
we
cost.
should-
that's
We
what-
should be
that's where it comes-
waiving all permit fees for ourselves.
Well, it's just the cost, it's the cost of the manpower to work on the permit. So I think, Commissioner, did we make a motion? I'll move
I
it.
think, we're gonna show a couple things, I think we're showing that, everyone here is gonna become a co-sponsor with Commissioner Rose Gonzalez as prime. And the motion, we return to commission with a favorable recommendation to expend up to $250,000, for the TVRN program funded through the sanitation fund.
Yeah, and 2 things, I think we have public comment. Could we add to this, and this has nothing to do with this specific item, this has been a recurring theme, so don't think that this, can you send me a line by line cost analysis of what this is? right? Like, I really need to understand how this is over $50,000.
Well, I would tell you, you're getting 2 containers, both air conditioned, one with a kitchen, and I do think that Holly and Linda
The
really
bulk
sourced
wasn't-
this.
Oh, this isn't about this specific item, right? This is just about why it costs government so much to do anything. We've had this same conversation on 20 different items.
Right.
I promise you, it has nothing to do with you, your analysis, or anything like that. I just need to understand whether it be playground equipment, a shade structure that costs $30,000 when I'm looking at it, and they go, well, yes, but for you, we could get it for the nice price of $450,000. Oh, well, thank you very much. I need to understand why I can go on and get a prefabricated home that I would literally hand over the keys to my apartment for and move into tomorrow for $40,000, but 2 trailers for cats are $250,000.
Well, I think they actually said that the trailers are 25,000, right?
Yeah,
Each?
they're
Yeah.
35 for the really fancy one, which has the sink and the bathroom and the kitchen.
the same
But
price.
where the biggest expense is, you've got to lay down the foundation, you've got to make a sidewalk, a ramp, you've got to run electric, you've got to now deal with sewage.
Plumbing, electrical.
Yeah.
So if I can,
Delivery
Commissioners,
setup.
I can send you the
Permitting.
cost
Yeah,
estimate breakdown.
yeah, I
You've
just
got to
want
hire
to provide.
architects
And this
to
isn't
get
for
the
this,
permits.
this is just my learning curve, you know.
By the way, this is what business owners and residents have to deal with, right? You know, think about that. The majority of the cost is basically conforming to some ridiculous policy regulation and permit fees, when in reality, the cost of the actual structure is only like a fifth of the price. And, you know,
Yeah.
it's a little disingenuous for us to say, well, why don't we just waive our own permit fee? Because when everyone else has to pay it, you know, but Godspeed, okay? And I want to bring up another, the waste hauler, okay?
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah, well, listen, I think, you know, look, the reason why, you know, we're not, you know, we're going to be in a worse fiscal responsibility is because sometimes we're all guilty of this, even including me, kind of kick the can down the road and are hesitant to make a decision. So I think maybe by June or the July meeting, let's have a discussion on if we want a single hauler or a multi-hauler, and then let's just get it over with and get our sanitation fund back into black. So
Just make a motion to put it on the June agenda so that we can finally hear it.
Okay.
You can do that, right?
I think that's a good idea. So
I
let's
make a motion to put it on the June agenda. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Okay. There we go. Fun,
That's
fun,
the
Brad.
trash.
Okay. And we have the other motion for the kitty campus, so I think we're good.
Let me, if I,
Everyone's like,
Mary Schaefer, please unmute yourself.
Hi, again. Can we get an extra container for Joe? Because apparently his digs at home are not working for him. I want to say thank you to Linda and Holly. They should be thanked more often for all their hard work. Thank you also to Brad Kane for taking care of this department and this function for the city that's so important. I believe that regarding financing this, here's some ideas. I believe that the county, Miami-Dade Animal Services, should be paying for this. We pay taxes. We pay so many taxes to Miami-Dade County, but we don't get the animal services funding that we need. They get about 43 million in budget. We are about an eighth, I believe, of the property taxes paid into the county. That's about $5 million that they should be providing in services. They should be paying for this, and we should be sending the mayor and the city manager to lobby or negotiate with them to get what our share of their budget. Next, another idea is to go out to nonprofits and look for grants. A local provider might be Friends of Miami Animals. National ones might be Rachel Ray and Beth Stern. Howard Stern's wife has Beth's Furry Friends. They might be interested in sponsoring this. I know that Rachel Ray is part of the Food and Wine Festival, so there's a connection there. And also Howard Stern is a Florida resident. He lives in Palm Beach, so that might be an option. 2 creative ideas for funding. As a neighbor, I would like to see a mural on the side of these and also mature landscaping installed. Just, I know that the container homes, I'm very familiar with them. They can be beautiful, but boxy. And I think a little bit of landscaping on them, maybe a green roof would be an idea for that. Finally, the containers, I like that they can be moved to another location if the KC moves. Keep in mind, volunteers work there, so you want to make it nice about paying them so they get paid in the experience and the environment, so it's a good investment. You're getting free labor, you want to take care of them. And the south of Fifth Ecom location. I think I ran out of
Thank you,
time.
Larry.
Hey,
And as a side note, Cats pays more than half the expense to run the kitty campus.
Yeah.
So we have fundraisers and contribute quite a bit, all volunteers.
So Chair, if I can, we have the motion on this item, but I don't have who's making the motion?
I'm making the motion on which item, the
This
waste item?
this is related to the kitty
Kitty-
campus?
Okay, motion.
Okay.
Second by-
Second by Commissioner Magazine. All in favor?
Aye.
Showing that pass. Now, on this item about waste hauler, which is not this agenda item, I don't
Yeah,
think,
we can't make a motion
I think
on that.
whatever commissioner is interested would just speak with
Nice
Rick
try.
about getting an item on
Well-
the June agenda.
Brad and I will, you could just tell Brad to put it on the agenda.
Does it need to come from a commissioner or can it come from staff?
I think the item is currently with staff, and I think staff has heard, some feelings here, so staff should consider what the next move should be.
Bring it forward, Brad.
Okay.
Great, next item.
Great, thank you
To,
so much.
NB 20, Miami
Free
Beach
cat
Promenade. Thank you, ladies, so much for all that you do.
And
Is this you, Commissioner Fernandez? Let me tee it up for you.
MB 20, discuss potential short-term improvements at Miami Beach Promenade, formerly known as Miami Beach Drive, situated between 24th Street and 29th Street, including rehabilitation of sidewalks, landscapes, lighting improvements, and other necessary aesthetics. MB 20.
And we've been working on this for a long time. It's along a very highly dense area of our city, and it's also adjacent to our beach walk. But we are facing issues with flooding there. We're facing issues with the sidewalk there, and just landscape and sanitation issues. So I'm going to pass it over to Brad to tell us what short-term improvements are in the works.
I'll try to talk about the positives first. And from a landscape perspective, we have been doing more routine landscape maintenance there, including mowing, trimming, shrubbery edging, irrigation, and the additional green space management staff has provided palm tree pruning as well. So from a landscape perspective, we've been improving, and I've heard only good things about that. The more challenging issues have recently been, we did a test pilot program with the pavement there between 24th and 25th Street that was grinded and sealed, and unfortunately, the results of that just didn't yield what would be a good temporary fix. It's just that the pavement there is really, really rough. It's just not in good shape. It's been there a long time, and these...
Since the early 80s?
It's a long time. I can get you the specifics, but it's been a long time.
It just highlights the fact that there really hasn't been significant public investment.
There
in this
hasn't,
area.
and I think as part of what CIP is doing, that will hopefully be a permanent solution to address the pavement there, because it probably all needs to really be replaced as part of that program. Again, we thought that this, perhaps method that we engaged in.
So what other options are there to improve the sidewalk conditions along Miami Beach Promenade?
What we're gonna do is, we did something similar to this the year before, when Joe Gomez was still here, with a different contract, and we're perhaps gonna, we have talked about reaching back out to them and seeing, maybe if they could do another, test sample with their application, and if that would yield maybe perhaps different results.
Okay.
That could be something
How
we could
about-
go forward, on an interim basis.
Okay, how about on the issue of the flooding, especially we're heading into rainy season, and I know the ladies at MBNA and Oscar and the entire group gets very concerned. And just for those of us, just for the benefit of the public, this is the area, this promenade that is just west of the beach walk, between the One Hotel and the Addition, so adjacent to the Riviera, the Mirasol, Club Atlantis, Trident Towers, that area there. So there's issues there of uneven pavers, and there's issues of flooding. The uneven pavers have caused issues of trip and falls in the past, and the flooding has been a recurring thing. So, what are we doing to address that?
Well, the staff, our street staff has been working on the onset of the resetting the existing pavers. They've been doing that and they've been prioritizing that. I will get an update as to where we are in that in the process, but we have been doing that and they have been having, some success, with that. So that's a positive. The hardest part of it all is really the drainage issue because there really are no connection points at all there. So that makes it much more challenging than working in other areas.
Are these pavers permeable?
I believe so.
Can we get clarification on
Yes.
that? Because maybe, we might be resetting the pavers, and if we are facing a flooding issue there, maybe we just should be looking at, if we're looking at resetting, that means we're filling it with sand or something and putting them back in so that the surface is leveled. I would imagine that's what resetting the pavers
Correct.
would mean.
Correct.
If we're going through that exercise and we're using a product that's not permeable, that might be contributing to the flooding, might be better, do we do a Venetian drain? Do we do some sort of, what's it called, the grass brick, or something else that makes it more easy for the water to be absorbed?
One other thing that, we've just recently discussed with our engineering team is possibly looking at maybe French drains.
Right.
Again, it's not ideal, but it may be able to yield some benefit because again, not having any connection points in that location, make it a lot more challenging.
Or even maybe in some of those areas, we just replace the bricks with green space. You put, grass back in there because that way it's something that, people could use more than just a hard surface.
Absolutely, we can
So
look at that as well.
let's get some feedback on this. I think we should meet with the working group from MBNA that is dealing with this. I think we should try to go on site with them.
Absolutely.
And perhaps we can keep this open, Mr. Chair, and bring it back for another update. Let's not say next month, but the following month, so we have some time.
September, because I think we don't meet in August, correct?
Right, so September. So
Okay.
that should give us sufficient time.
Plenty of time.
To, look at addressing some of these issues.
So we'll show the item heard and return in September. Thank you.
Commissioner
Thank you,
Fernandez,
Brad.
why don't you stay on the spotlight and hear NB6? I know that was something you wanted to hear.
We'll call that in. MB6.
I'm withdrawing that item. Yeah, I know how important the red light camera program is for our public safety efforts, for as much as I would like to do away with them. Well, actually, there is one thing I would like to understand, and perhaps it's through the attorney. There's a contract that we have with a red light camera vendor.
Yes, there is.
Okay, what's the status of that? Does it expire at a certain point?
I'm going to defer to the gentleman who just came up to the podium.
Okay.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sergeant Price from the Accident Unit. So we actually have a contract that started in 2022 with the new vendor. Well, it's our old vendor, but they won the contract again. I believe their name now is Elevate. So the way it reads, as far as I understand, is that it goes into effect after the 10th location is built out.
The 10th location. How many locations are currently built out?
Two.
Two.
Yeah.
And we went into contract with this vendor when?
2022.
2022. And so then that means that they're implementing the program. Because right now, we currently have 2 cameras. They get a percentage of those revenues. Is that correct?
As far as I understand, yes.
Right. But then their contract term doesn't start until they've done the 10th installation. So for as long as they don't do that 10th installation, can they drag this out for as long as they like? I mean, that's just a concern that I have because at one point I was looking to repeal the program. I'm not a fan of the red light cameras. Your office did some research about this, and you guys educated me as to the contract that's involved. But I'm just concerned, is this a way that a vendor might be gaming us, where they just kick the can down the road they kick the can past the red light camera and down the road to extend the contract period.
Sure. I was not involved in negotiating that contract. I don't know who was at my office. I would typically have included a drop dead date by when the term would begin. That does not appear to be in this particular contract. I think the question is the vendor acting in good faith? Is the vendor doing everything that the vendor needs to be doing in order to secure the permits or whatever regulatory approvals it may need from the county or whoever else is involved? But that's not something that our office is monitoring. That would be something, again, that I would defer to police to advise as to whether you believe that the vendor is doing everything possible to get the installations in, and if not,
But to your point,
yes.
this was a renewal in 2022. When was the initial contract?
I want to say 2010, if I'm not mistaken. I don't want to misspeak, but I want to say somewhere around 2010.
Okay, so the initial contract in 2010, and 15 years later, we still don't have the 10th location. So I think, Mr. Attorney, if your office just could look into it, I understand the importance of the program. In terms of public safety, I get that. We want the cameras because the cameras help us identify cars with people that might have arrest warrants, or cars that may be stolen, and that type of stuff. So it does serve a very good public purpose. I get that. For as much as I don't like my little old people getting the red light camera tickets, and for as much as I hate the accidents that they do inadvertently cause, I get the public purpose. However, I just want to make sure that this vendor is not gaming this 10th camera installation to their benefit.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna need to work closely with the police department to determine whether there's anything more that the vendor should be doing, whether there needs to be any kind of notice sent pursuant to the contract to make sure that a fire is lit under their rear.
So we can share.
You like lighting fires under people's rears.
So we'll just show the item discussed and closed, and I think you got some direction. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all. We have members from the Lincoln Road bid here. Thank you. Let's hear NB 33. Hopefully this is very quick. City staff could just say, we're looking at this, and Lincoln Road bid wants to be involved in how this plays out.
MB 33, discuss the placement of additional or improved wayfinding that would direct guests, customers, residents from the Miami Beach Convention Center to Lincoln Road Mall, MB 33.
Yeah, and where this comes from, I spend a lot of time just walking around our campus here and exploring. I think there's a tremendous amount that, from an urban planning standpoint, just doesn't make sense. And we have thousands of people that go into the convention center, and you get out and you just at times feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, and you certainly don't appreciate that you are 2 blocks away from Lincoln Road. So I think we should be drawing attention to that. I think we have so much sign pollution in the city, it's nauseating, but I want this to be something that's artistic and fun, that is inviting, not, something that looks like a no parking sign.
Hi, Claudia Jagged with the Lincoln Road bid. We just want to be involved in the process, and I think there's another item, F8, which has to do with the
Painting
garage.
of the 17th Street garage.
17th Street
Same
garage.
thing, you walk out.
Same thing.
You go down, is that Convention Center Drive right there? And you just see this brutalist, sorry if I get that architecture wrong, but brutalist garage that looks awful and uninviting, disgusting. And that is our gateway into Lincoln Road. That is across from Miami Beach City Hall.
Yeah.
Right? We should take pride in that. It looks awful. It should be artistic. It should be inviting. It should have some sort of great mural on it, whatever it may be. It should be cool and signal to the thousands of conventioneers that are coming out from Chicago or Detroit, where it's 4 degrees outside, and they landed in Miami Beach, and it's February, and we have this beautiful city. It says, this is Miami Beach. Not, here's a Macy's that looks like it's from 1970, and a parking garage. So go get in your car and have fun.
I love this item, by the way, what you're mentioning, because when you drive south on Convention Center Drive, what you see is that blank canvas of the 17th Street garage. And we know that building does have structural issues, and it is reaching, probably the end of its lifespan, and someday it has, but for as long as it's there,
Well, thank you all for putting my RFP up on the roof there.
for as long as it's there, that is such a beautiful canvas where we can have something artistic, really welcoming people. Not only welcoming people to Miami Beach and the convention center, welcoming people to Lincoln Road. People don't know, you're so right. You are in the heart of our city, in our city center. You come and you don't realize that you're just a few feet away from Lincoln Road. I totally support your idea.
That's it. So, I don't know if I have to take official action. Brad, can the bid get in touch with you about doing these signs, or do we need to take some sort of action on this?
In our
or
recommendation, we said we absolutely support it, and this can be handled, basically through the wayfinding sign program, so we're good, we can get it done.
So
Okay,
if I may, just
funding.
because of the
garage
direction,
is
I
future.
think that, that's a future item that isn't on this agenda. But this item on the wayfinding, I think that any recommendation has to go back to commission, but I think it's just a simple return to commission with a favorable recommendation to direct the administration to work with the Lincoln Road bid on wayfinding signage from the convention center to Lincoln Road.
Okay, so
And
that
what-
would be.
yeah,
the
And what
motion.
is classified as wayfinding signage? Is that, am I getting overly excited here? Is this gonna look like a traffic sign, or is this something where, almost like what we have outside of City Hall, where it
Well,
goes
see, I think in
Lisbon
the-
over here, Madrid over here? Could it be something cool and artistic?
We put a picture in here, so it's kind of like this.
That looks awful.
Let me see.
But I
I
think
don't know,
if,
something cool where, a little.
Look, we need sign help everywhere. I know that Commissioner Suarez had another item for signs on Lincoln Road, and we should possibly engage someone to come up with a great design for Lincoln Road, for the convention center complex area, and then just replace all those signs. That's really what the recommendation should be to the commission on this item. Work with the Lincoln Road bid. But I know Commissioner Suarez's item is different, but
Side street.
all signs to get a design, something, to get a better design and
And
replace
maybe it's
these
something
signs.
the
I know
bid
that
could even
Annabelle has a lot of
participate in the
ideas.
funding. Right, it's not just, we have parking, don't park here.
No offense,
park here.
Brad, it's not your
Yeah,
fault.
it's not you, Brad. But I think it's something that is cool and artistic that also serves as a very good direction that Lincoln Road is right ahead. Right, it's, yeah,
No, but I know that the garage is future, but maybe we do the garage first, since, it's kind of backwards, because the garage is there now, and maybe they're both kind of branded together, the wayfinding and
yeah,
garage.
it's, how about the sign that's downstairs right out front of City Hall, fronting Convention Center Drive, where it's almost like the sister cities, where they have the ones that are pointing in directions. It says this city here. I forget the specific cities that are there. But it serves as wayfinding,
Yeah,
but it just has
I
a
know
little
down-
cool
I know what
artistic
you're
touch,
talking- I know what you're
something
talking
along
about.
those lines.
if I may, if the request is to work with the Lincoln Road bid, I think that whatever the teams would come up with, it would be something that would be amicable to the Lincoln Road bid.
Yeah.
Great.
So if that's the recommendation, to direct them and to work with the Lincoln Road bid to come up with a good wayfinding signage program between the two.
And
we
if
just
you
need
could
someone to
include
make
my
that motion.
office in that, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think with those, I've seen them in different cities. I know in downtown Mount Dora, they have it in their historic district. The one thing I would say is, find one location, like one pivotal location, whether it be Pennsylvania or Meridian, or one or two pivotal locations, so that you don't have them all along the corridor, because they can be a little bit overwhelming. But if you have like two key locations that points you in different locations.
But I think on the CIP plan, there might be something on Drexel or Meridian already that was designed on a side street, but I'm not sure.
I don't know if upstairs in the booth, they have the picture I just sent them. I don't know if PJ is there, but I texted him a picture about but I don't know if they got it or not, so maybe they didn't.
PJ? Wow, did we just realize that PJ just has this on cruise control and
Autopilot.
Autonomous.
Well, maybe-
Autonomous
and-
cameras.
Talk about the technology that's helping efficiency.
I'm not sure if it's independent, but I don't know if you want to make the motion to do the vote while he's trying to find it, or do you want to wait?
Let's just keep it here, right? We'll hear it again in, let's call it,
Well, I think to take action, I think you were looking at sending this back to commission to direct the work to happen. But if you don't want the work to happen and wait, then it would stay
well,
here.
do want the work to happen, but the work can just be us talking with Lincoln Road Bid and my office and any other commissioners that want to give input about what that sign should look like, right? I'm not talking about, we need something that looks like, the Burning Man statue, but something that is a little better than just the wayfinding statue that looks like 10 million other signs in our city.
Okay, so we'll just show the item discussed and staff to return with, I guess you were looking for pictures,
Different
something
signs,
like that?
yes.
In September.
Okay, so we'll show it, we'll just show it return, we'll show the item heard, and returning.
By the way, whatever signage you guys pick and design can also roll over to Commissioner Suarez's item, and then, we can see the signage makes a huge difference. I mean, it's transformative, it's not expensive.
You should walk out of that convention center and feel like you were somewhere cool, right? And right now, I don't get that feeling when you walk out there. Like, you should feel, wow, I am in Miami Beach, and I don't get that feel. It feels like you just landed in anywhere USA.
And what about South Beach? The signs are old and worn and tattered too. There's no specific design. Mid Beach should have its design. The North Beach at one point had its design, but those signs are just falling apart too. They're weathered, they're battered. And I know we have money for signs. I think, don't we have money in the geo bond for signs, Jason? Was there sign money there?
I don't recall there specifically being a bucket specifically for signage. It was sidewalks, trees, asphalt, things like that. I could be wrong.
I do know that we worked with communications, Brad, and we came up with a design, and we didn't spend any money to do it, to brand, the Palm View neighborhood, so.
So we'll show the item heard and return with recommended wayfinding signage in conjunction with the Lincoln Road bid.
What's the funding
Thank you.
source for this?
The discussion is free. The discussion is free.
Funding source for, is this something that, does staff support this?
Yeah,
Does-
we're
Yeah,
good.
the
We
administration,
we're
so
absolutely-
where does the administration recommend that the funding come from?
Well, we don't know what the funding is.
Okay.
We also
Right.
don't have any idea at this
Yeah, I
point
mean,
what
it
the
could be
signage
like
is.
$2,000. Well,
Okay,
I
good.
mean, we
Yeah,
are the city, so
hopefully.
it'll probably be
It could
a few
come, it
million.
could come out of the wayfinding program. I mean, just obviously depends on the cost.
Yeah,
Okay.
excellent. Thank you all so much for that.
And I'll just confirm that there is a sign on Pennsylvania on the CIP plan already.
Like a sign or
There's
a
like
sign?
a thing, a big thing, but it's not gonna be outside the convention center, it's not gonna
Yeah,
take care of the
yeah.
garage, but there
Right.
is
Yeah,
some
I'm thinking
signage once you're
somewhere
like approaching.
right in between the convention center hotel and the convention center, somewhere along there. David?
Hi, good afternoon. To clarify, there is a signage package included in the Lincoln Road Improvement Project. It is within that area. It doesn't extend all the way out to the convention center or even down the side streets. There are reference points that reference beach and convention center and the museum and the New World Symphony, but it's limited to within that area. They're not extending beyond that.
Well, maybe we could just do those signs right now, because we're not even starting that main project until 2027. So at least if it's clean and there's beautiful new signs, that goes a long way, instead of waiting until 2029 and sitting there with the same weathered signs.
Okay, the signage within Lincoln
What?
Road will be part of the Lincoln Road?
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful, and I mean, if we have funding there, I would move forward and just do the signs. And if we paid James Corner to come up with signs, then take his design and just put the signs up,
Yeah.
like we did the lighting.
I mean, this isn't complicated. Right? If you put in ChatGPT, create an artistic wayfinding sign for Lincoln Road, you get pretty cool examples. Do that.
It's not a bad idea. Something tropical with flamingos, put that in there too.
Yeah, put a flamingo under it. Be creative. I don't know. Go out and be creative. Make this place cool.
We can put cats, pictures of cats
Yeah.
from the kitty campus.
Their lobby team is already strong enough, Commissioner.
Iguanas. Iguana.
Okay.
The official city reptile.
I appreciate it. I'm very excited to see what comes back. Let's move on to NB 35 and NB 36. Can we hear these together?
Let me call them in. These are both parks items. NB 35, discuss take action to expand access and discounted rates for North Bay Village residents at Normandy Park Pool and North Beach recreational programming. That's NB 35. NB 36, discuss take action on possible revision of non-resident entrance fees and/or the introduction of resident guest pass for city pools. NB 36.
It's great.
Commissioner Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the commissioners who I'm working with in North Bay Village asked me to defer it to next month.
Oh.
So, what's up?
Both items? Or?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's just defer it 1 month, and then I think they'll even be present for the next one.
I just want to say,
Huh?
Jason said it wasn't on.
A FERC meeting? Yeah, let me connect with them. They texted me today to defer, so.
I just want to say, I love this item.
Yeah, no, it's a good item.
And I think, you know, you're setting a good example because as we look at new capital, we should also be looking, okay, what do our neighboring municipal governments have in terms of parks? Do they have a park that we don't need to recreate here? Like the Olympic-sized pools, like, you know, are there other places where they have Olympic-sized pools? Like Doral just created an Olympic-sized pool. Like seeing what do the other cities, in this case on the Barrier Island, already offer so that we don't replicate services, and what do we have that they can take advantage of as well, because no one knows the municipal boundary lines. We're all one community. We're all neighbors, and I love that you're bringing this forward.
Yeah,
It's so great.
Thank you, Commissioner. One of the requests was that they make it free, and in return, our kids can go to their summer camp for free. I think there's
specifically
It's
what
neighborly.
for free?
Yeah,
I love that.
This is for North Bay Village.
What item for free? The pool access?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, you know, in addition to discounted rates for their new sports complex. So they're going to be getting a huge sports complex. And, you know, we want to have a collaboration, but we want to just make sure we get it right. So
How many
I'd work
kids
for
can go
it.
to the summer camp?
that's
program?
what I want to iron out between.
Great, we need to get that done.
So I'll work with
ASAP.
Brandon on this? Is
Huh?
that Brandon? Should I work with Brandon
Yeah,
on this? He has the
please.
information?
Sure.
So again, deferred, it sounds like July 11th next week is going to be too soon, so
No,
we'll show.
I think it could be, but.
Okay, we'll just copy the items
And
over,
if
so.
anything, we'll just defer it again. So-
Okay, so we'll just show the item deferred for now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
John, why don't you stay up here and we'll hear NB 22.
NB 22.
NB 22, discuss requesting the administration to explore the feasibility of establishing a Muscle Beach in North Beach, considering the widely recognized positive impact on the health, community, and quality of life observed at Muscle Beach and South Beach.
John,
NB 22.
When I go to Ocean Drive, I look at about what works and what does not work. One of the things that just works is Muscle Beach. That area is incredible. The activation, whether you're a bro like my friend David, whether you are just more recreational, or whether you're just rollerblading by and observing what's going on, it is such a positive activation for Miami Beach. People come from all over. There's even fitness tourism. People come there to work in outdoor, and I'm really excited to be working on an expansion of that area. We need to show that same love to North Beach. What are some ideas there? And one of the things, you know, piggybacking on what we heard up here is this is probably going to come with a not insignificant ask. I don't think in the millions of dollars, but something where it could put us, you know, with some funding challenges. What are some creative ways where we can maybe privately raise funding to really kickstart this expansion?
Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner. I couldn't agree with you more. I know myself and many people say dollar for dollar, Muscle Beach may be the most transformational project we did, at least in the Parks Department. It really is amazing. So we took a look at North Beach, and there's a few areas you have Bench Hill Park and the area behind it where we call the Sand Bowl. That area is heavily used by volleyball, beach tennis, and those sand net activities. So I wouldn't recommend taking away any space from them because that area is growing. So we went up to Altos Del Mar Park, and we do have two sand volleyball courts there. And that's really the only space that we have other than the park itself with the turf, the grass. It's possible, we have the volleyball courts to the south.
How far to the south?
Oh my God, terrible blocks, like 4 blocks, 3 blocks. It's just you have to traverse Ocean Terrace, which is going to be a beautiful public space very soon. There may be an opportunity to go ahead and take those 2 volleyball courts that we have at Altos Del Mar, and we could probably move them to the beach side. We may need to remove them from time to time, but we could work with the county, so we wouldn't take away from that group, and then take that volleyball space at Altos and turn that into our North Beach, Muscle Beach. Looking at just dollar amounts while getting into fundraising or sponsorships, looking at what we did at South Beach, looking at about maybe $400,000. I'm thinking it might be less because the footprint is less. And then I don't have any strong leads on anything major for any sort of sponsorship yet. One group did come with, I don't want to put their name on the record, one group did come with some maybe small donation of some equipment, but nothing major actually like fund it or fund half of it, but we continue to look at that.
I think the original Muscle Beach had some artistic.
Yes.
And that costed money, and there was a cost to that?
Yes, there was. There was some very basic equipment, pull-up bars and whatnot at Muscle Beach, and then we worked with the My Equilibria, and that was an artistic piece, the leopard tree it's called. That's what the focal point that you see down there. And we worked with the group from Italy that brought them there. We did get a discount at that time. It was their first installation, I believe, at least in the public space for sure, in the United States, but there was a cost associated with it.
General idea what that, because that's what I'd be looking to see, right? I know that we have a little less of a footprint, but I'm not envisioning. We want to do things world class, right? Not just like a pull-up bar and somewhere to do push-ups, like something that is going to be a draw and an attraction.
Absolutely, and nothing less. So we'd be looking, if we wanted to mirror what we did in South Beach, estimate would be $400,000.
And if we didn't have that artistic component, what would it be?
I'm guessing I would take $100,000 off of that. And I was just guessing. We'd want to put the pull-up bars, go ahead and put the fitness locker, the container that has all of the free weights and whatnot. We'd want to do that, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I go to Muscle Beach all the time.
Really?
Most of the activity is near the containers where they have the pull-up bars, the push-up bar, the bench presses, squat racks, and I don't think that doesn't cost $400,000. I mean, that should be pretty cost.
Right. My estimate included all of the components you see at South
Does it
Beach.
include My Equilibria?
Yes. Yes, and now over at even at Pride Park, we have the My Beast, and we have it would be the west side of Flamingo Park, track and football field. We have so there's another option with instead of doing the leopard tree, there is another My Equilibria.
Are we locked into that cost for them? Do we have a standard rate with that company?
We do not have a standard rate with that company.
Does this have to go through procurement or?
Well, something like that, if we want to be very specific, I believe we may have a procurement resolution that allows us to do it. If not, we would have to do a waive of bid because that is one company does that specific equipment.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like a lot to have, monkey bars. I think there's rings, muscle up rings, and I know there's like a nice artistic structure. But for like $500,000, it seems like a lot of money.
We could. This was for discussion purposes only. As I get more direction, I could refine the scope and get it more.
You could always do this in phases. I mean, you don't have to go in with the artistic element. I think the artistic element does create an attraction and does give it a sense of
Instagrammable.
place. It's very, yeah, and it gives it a sense of place. I think people, know that it's there, kind of get drawn to it. Um, but um, but I see it with Pride Park when I see outside my window. I think the sculpture that's there, it does draw the people there.
And we did face South Beach, so, Loomis Park, so this is a very feasible project in that it's components. You set a footprint and you put your components in.
Yeah, and again, most of the discussion today was on how to save money, right?
Exactly.
So if you want to come back with maybe a phase plan. But I think at the very minimum, people want to have the same sort of amenities that they do in South Beach, right? Bench press, free weights, bars, and you haven't reached out to maybe Rogue to see if they'd be willing to sponsor a lot of the equipment.
I have not reached out to Rogue.
Okay.
Yeah, please, get creative in some of the sponsorships. Maybe let's brainstorm about getting creative about how we could do almost some Parks and Rec fundraisers, right? And maybe it could be allocated towards some of these expansions quickly. We could have some type of huge event at Muscle Beach where people, are coming down. Let's get creative. Maybe we could do some sort of quasi fundraiser.
Well, to your point, bless you. I think we should refer an item, maybe back to this committee. We used to have a foundation called, I think it was called One Miami Beach. I think there's so many wonderful things that we want to do in the community, like this. And I think we should have like a wish list because there's so much wealth that's coming into this community. People that want to contribute back to Miami Beach. The other day I spoke with someone that wanted to contribute a few $100,000 to help us with pickleball courts. And and I think of people like that who just have wealth, who want to contribute to the city, but they don't know what the city's needs are, unfunded programs that we have that we could potentially get done quicker with private investment. And we should look at putting together a wish list like that of individuals that may want to come forward and be charitable and contribute to the city. I don't know if we have any legal restrictions with that, but if it's something we could explore.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's a prohibited donor, then we would need the commission to accept a donation. If it's below a certain threshold, then the manager could accept it pursuant to a resolution that was adopted a few years ago.
Yeah, because we might have children parks, Muscle Beach activations, cultural stuff that we may want to do that we don't have funded, and people with deep pockets that are moving into our city might see that, it might touch an interest of theirs and they may want to contribute to the city.
So, and also for the equipment, I think a company like Rogue would jump on this to put their brand of equipment in this location.
We'll reach
for
out.
free. It's a highly targeted location, so I'm surprised you guys haven't done that yet. But any sort of which way where we can make this happen in the most cost-effective way, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see Commissioner Magazine's item, be on like warp speed, because we are changing into a fitness-oriented community, right? Everything about what we're trying to change our brand image is fitness and wellness related. So I certainly welcome outside funding, but I think where would this item be now? What position? You'd have to come back to this committee and tell us the stages of funding, or does this go to the commission now?
That was clarification I was looking for.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Was at first it was looking like there'd be the standard to return to commission with a favorable recommendation of considering funding the budget, and also to direct administration to find a sponsor to assist with the implementation, which I think is similar to what was done at the expansion of the South Beach one, which was less about Any additional new funding was just directing to find sponsors for that. But then there was talk about a phased implementation, so I wasn't sure if this was an item that, based on, parks needs to get input and discussion, if they're about specific vendors or, rogue, a company or something like that. So if they want to give some direction to staff to, do a little bit more research and come back with a more
Well, Mr.
refined
Chair-
program.
Mr. Chair, this is your item. How would you like to move this?
Maybe if staff could look at some sponsorships, right? Have a more refined depiction of what this area could look like. And then we'll essentially determine, okay, here's where we think some sponsorships could come from. And then where could we essentially plug that funding gap?
So this is, and help me
Or
if I'm
perhaps
off
it's
it.
even something the CRA would take up as well.
So that would be a separate issue, but I think on yours, and I'll ask Rick to chime in if I'm off on this, is that I think you would send it back to commission to direct the administration to then begin the process of, going out and seeking sponsors through the various avenues that they have available to them. John?
Yeah, yes, and I'll work on this, I'll work on the phasing plan, everything. My clarity, Jason, is we'd want to take the budget processes now. If I don't come back to July with a phasing plan, we've missed the 26th
Right, so that's,
budget.
so that was part of the thing is this something, because on the South Beach item that you had on it, it wasn't about funding, it was about just directing the administration to find a sponsor and to implement as the sponsorship comes up? Or is this about kind of a blend of the two, meaning that it should go through the budget process, but also direct finding a sponsor? And I'll just give an example. He's
so
able
let's
to do
put it in the budget process. I know it's going to be a big wish list that a lot of people have. So I want to provide some second options if this doesn't get funded in this budget cycle. I don't want this being one of the things that's just kicked down the road. I want some alternative funding mechanisms.
Commissioner,
And how much is the total cost of a Muscle Beach? It's not that much.
he was saying 300,000 to 400,000.
$300,000. And could we take that out of, the reason I think this is so important is that this really does create community. I mean, I don't hang out at Muscle Beach like you guys do. You
should.
But
You're welcome.
I do know that there's a group of people that religiously goes to Muscle Beach. And like now they're even like selling coconut juices, like waters there. So it's creating a real community space. And by the way, North Beach needs that. We do it in South Beach. We could either use it for in tourism taxes. Maybe you take half of it out of the CRA and half of it out of tourism, but just get that funded and get it up and going, because parks, we get immediately, pretty much. John is really good at going out there, setting up the park. It's something that residents see. It has an immediate impact, and anything that we can do like that while we're waiting 10 to 20 years to get a capital project completed, I would say let's go for it, because at least it shows that we're proactively doing something.
Yeah, I think this is low-hanging fruit that, like you said, a tremendous bang for the buck.
And Commissioner, I think to your point that's the important part of the second part of that motion is to, if it isn't find funding through the budget process, is direct the administration to find sponsorship. So if I'm just making a number up, if it ends up being a $300,000 enhancement, if it doesn't find funding or partial funding, by having that direction, it wouldn't fall through the cracks. You would still direct the administration to find a sponsor to perhaps implement it in another way or partially. So if that is the motion.
And to have it on the June budget as an amendment.
The motion, my understanding of the motion is to be considered as part of the 26 budget process, and and that's the.
Part of the process, or just have it as a budget amendment and just get it done? Pull some from we can get permission to pull some of it from the CRA, pull some of the funding from a tourism reserve, and just get that done over the summer. How long would it take you if we fund it, John, to get that done?
I'd have to check the lead times of the equipment, but less than a year, I'm thinking
Yeah,
6 to 9 months.
now. It's going to take a year. And you know what, Jason? As part of these things that we're pushing through, maybe you just repay us what, in the future, to where we according to our policies, we have to replenish these funds. But if we don't fund it now and you wait to fund it, that's how we get to places where it takes 2 and 3 years to do something.
We could even take some of the revenue that's being generated from the paddle RFP in years ahead.
Okay. I wouldn't complicate things. I would say half from, if you could get it from the CRA, get it from the CRA. And if you can't get it from the CRA, then do half and half. Just do a little tourism, a little CRA, and
I would
pull
have
it
to, on the
together.
CRA, I would have to ask economic development. I'm not sure if they're here, if they're able to answer. I don't know if this is, we have to be wary on the, remember the
This is-
CRA funding.
This
that if
is
it's
right
part
up
of
their
the-
alley, though. This
If
is
we
like,
have to see if it's approved, part of the approved plan.
Oh.
And also, I believe the commission has expended all, I think, if not all of the reserves already of the CRA, most of it. So I'm not 100% sure if there's any money left. So what I would ask the sponsor then is, what is the motion?
Let's put it in the June budget process, and to the extent that we're able to get this rolling as quickly as possible.
So
part of the budget amendment. Nobody's voting against the Muscle Beach and
So what
North
we would
Beach.
show is that a favorable recommendation to direct the administration to implement a North Beach, Muscle Beach, and to direct the administration to find a sponsor to assist with implementation. After that item passes, then we would bring back a budget amendment from an applicable source to fund that.
Thank you.
Can I just mention something? I love this idea. I love Muscle Beach. I love the energy it creates, the people that it attracts, the community that it puts together. One of the things I would just mention, it'd be great as we do this there, to make something that is physically as inclusive as possible. We have the senior center that's right there behind that bowl area. And maybe, have something an element of it that is, that keeps them in mind. People of diverse age groups, because we do have the elderly people.
Senior swings.
It's a great point. I know it's my
Senior
item.
swinging.
I don't want this just for advanced athletes like myself. I'd love to see people like Commissioner Suarez there.
Exactly. You
So,
know.
thank you.
Commissioner,
Did we
for
just call
public
him old?
comment?
Yes.
Larry Schaefer, please unmute yourself.
I'd like to say thanks to Mr. Rebar. Staff got the location right on this one immediately. I don't think there's any debate that that's the right spot for this. Regarding the funding, there was a fitness center supposed to be built in the 72nd Street garage. Is it possible to use GEO bond money for that allocation over here for a fitness center that's outdoors? Maybe Jason Green can answer that. Regarding the CRA, I think they're fully spent, but maybe get on the agenda for a second phase or expansion. Agreed with Alex, you might want to change the mix of equipment for North Beach for an older crowd. We're North Beach fit. We're a little older. We may need different equipment. Yes, to artistic element, you have $25 million homes immediately north of this. Altos Del Mar single family homes. Maybe go and ask their association if they want to contribute to make it look better. And finally, 7605 Collins, Betsy Perez Place has space under air for interior fitness equipment if you want to provide. Just as another idea, I know that the commission is looking for a turtle rehab or marine life center there, but it would be wonderful to have fitness equipment under air. Thank you to Joe for supporting this item.
Thank you, Larry.
Chair just needed to know who makes that motion?
Am I able to?
I'll make the motion.
Yeah, and I'll second.
So we'll show Commissioner Suarez, seconded by Commissioner Magazine. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll show pass 3-0.
Can we hear 37 and then adjourn?
This
I
is a
just have a
quickie.
quick question.
Yes.
Since 7605 was just brought up, and I know we have an item that's before us at budget about seeing how we buy this back through the general fund from the enterprise fund. We just had our second quarter update that our city manager just sent to us, and we have, what is it, $4 million?
I think it's about 4.7.
$4.7 million.
Projected surplus.
Projected in this fiscal year, which, we look at those dollars, can we use those dollars to acquire 7605 through the general fund back from the enterprise fund, so that we don't place the burden of that completely on the next fiscal year. And just wanted to put that there into the universe, because I just know if we just store it all completely into the next fiscal year, it's just gonna make the numbers even better than what we want it to be. So just wanted to put it out there.
Do we need a motion to extend?
Yes.
Okay. We
I'll
can
make a motion to extend.
15 minutes.
It's just one item.
So we'll show it extended. And then let me read in item, Which item was it?
37.
37.
MB
MB 37, discuss senior meal site programming at South Shore Community Center, MB 37.
You staying for this one?
Good afternoon, Marcela Rubio, Assistant Director with the Office of Housing and Community Services. Just to provide you a quick update on the senior meal site programming that would serve up to 50 seniors at the South Shore Community Center.
That's it? 50 seniors?
Up to 50 seniors.
Why are we doing up to 50 seniors? There were like 100 people down there that were on a wait list. I thought it was going to be like 100 people.
Well, we put out an ITN for up to 50 seniors with the expectation to receive
it's
a
gonna grow
proposal.
over time.
And so we're now negotiating terms with the selected vendor, Jewish Community Services. We toured the site and we're working with facility staff and with procurement to finalize the details and work on a budget with them to get the services up and running as soon as the agreement is finalized.
When do you think that will be? Because, you know, as it gets hotter in summer, the seniors are literally stuck in their apartments and with no place to go. And so I was under the assumption, because this has been going on for a long time, what is the expected date? Can you get this up within a month? I mean, what are you
The
looking at
repair
now?
should be completed in June this month, and we hope to have the services finalized or ready to go by July.
I have a question.
So
How
we're
many-
working with JCS on that.
How many seniors do we have there before?
At some point, there may have been up to 75 seniors. I don't think they exceeded.
Why was the ITN, I mean, I do know that this is an area of our city where we do have a lot of seniors that do experience food insecurities. And we
This
have
is
a
our
lot of
poorest area. Sorry.
where we have a lot of seniors who are on fixed incomes. How do we, and there's probably a reasoning, a thinking behind limiting the ITN to 50.
Well, Alba Tarre, Office of Housing and Community Services, $175,000 were allocated, and we were looking at about $8 a meal per day. So to be able to accommodate individuals with the amount of funding that we had available,
see.
that's where it comes from.
Okay, and this is based on the which nutritional standards? I just want to make sure.
Yes, kosher meals are at about $8 or so.
Okay, but I just want to make sure that these are,
Nutritional standard meals.
nutritional
yes.
standards. Yeah, because sometimes some of these vendors, especially when it comes to people of low means, they'll give them all, starch, and not sufficient protein and that type of stuff. So I just want to make sure that there's a certain nutritional standard that we're adhering to.
And there's also a recreational programming component to it. So it's not just the meals, but there is some social component.
That's great. So what I would like to do with this is to keep this on the agenda until the July meeting, and hopefully in July, we're gonna get the update that it's up, it's running. And by the way, this is, if you wanna open this foundation, this is the kind of thing that we potentially might need to fund too, because we're funding, this and Unijab. Maybe we can raise money from a lot of people who would say, yes, we wanna fund seniors, we wanna fund gaps in school lunches or school breakfast, or, there's so many things. So Commissioner Fernandez, I would love for you to take on the One Miami Beach thing, because I do think there are so many opportunities, especially in some of the development agreements that are coming up to say, One Miami Beach, $1 million. Then look, you get $1 million right there. You're funding seniors, you're funding children, you're funding Muscle Beaches and all sorts of parks, programs that people benefit from.
I'm not sure I want to be going to developers, but if there are people
Well, I'm
in our
just saying-
community that want to come forward and,
Well, true, but if we had that vehicle, for example, if we had that vehicle when we have these development agreements, we could just say, yes, part of the public benefit goes to One Miami Beach, and then when we do have these requests, it will be funded. And I think that that's funding that has a serious impact. So my motion would just be to keep this on, get an update in July, and let's get it open so that the seniors from LULAB, and by the way, if you need to increase the amount of people, from 50 to 75, I would like to see what that number looks like for July too, because I think that you're gonna have somewhere between 50 and 75 to 100 seniors based on need. I mean, I think that prices are escalating at supermarkets. A Café Pilon, even Café La Llave is like $8. And that's just that's unacceptable. It was $2 or $3 like a year ago. So
I'll
this
move the item.
escalation in cost. Okay.
So
Second.
we'll show the item heard and return in July.
How much Café Pilon have you had today, Chris?
Did have several.
Meeting adjourned?
Mr. Chair, I'd be remiss not to recognize that today is the birthday of our dear colleague, Commissioner Laura Dominguez. And from her colleagues here, I would just want to wish her a beautiful and blessed birthday.
Happy birthday, Laura. Love you.